Chapter 629. Fei Jin had already boarded the streetcar heading to Acumen College. Luo Nan had been delayed by Tianbang, so he had most likely missed this train. The two controllers didn't feel that this was a pity. This sort of chance encounter was not worth it, especially since Luo Nan was at the most critical moment of his mental analysis. The Blood Flame Order's base in Xia City quieted down as well. Mrs. Halder had roughly finished categorizing the intelligence data and was put together for the final time. She pulled out the third set of data that had never been put to use before. It was the list of Luo Nan's discussions of cultivation theory and lectures. She paused for a moment and searched through the other two groups, especially the group with the Mask of Strength. She put the data in one by one. Yinlu calmed down and carefully observed. She discovered that the new data that Mrs. Halder had put in belonged to Luo Nan's performance when he dealt with Grey personnel. The so-called Grey personnel were neither friend nor foe. They were people who lacked friendship and good feelings. They were people who couldn't be considered mortal enemies. It wasn't just Tianbang. The gossip's lord, who had just spouted trouble, and OK, who had a conflict a few days ago over the location of the elusive secret device, were all in this group. If one were to go even further back, there were also a few ignorant second generations who dared to stroke a tiger's whiskers in the Ocean Sky Cloud City and Aurora Cloud City incident. There were also a few people from the management company in the Municipal Plaza incident. There were also a few people from the outer circle, represented by He Donglu, who were neither friendly nor aloof. Right now, Yinlu didn't need Mrs. Halder's guidance. Her mind was like a movie. She sorted through the data, and a certain impression formed. She opened her mouth, wanting to speak, but she forcefully restrained herself. If you want to say it, then say it. Mrs. Halder's keen insight was displayed in full force at this moment. Yinlu adjusted her breathing and said softly, I believe that Luo Nan is very distant from these people. Yes, distant. Aside from the few moments when he was stimulated to explode, where he had clear hostility and even killing intent, he basically ignored them. He was stiff, his thoughts jumped, and his mind was absent-minded. His mind wasn't on face-to-face communication at all. He was on a completely different frequency than these people. So? Mrs. Halder asked softly. Yinlu was about to come to a conclusion, but she hesitated before she said, there's no strict classification of personas. It doesn't matter if it's the third persona. Perhaps we can call it the mask of alienation for convenience. But we have to find the behind-the-scenes mechanism of its formation and operation to make sense. Mrs. Halder did not even raise her head. In other words, you only saw his attitude, but not his logic. Yinlu said, Boss, I believe that a person's thoughts and emotions are always continuous. From an outsider's point of view, it looked like it was jumping and torn, but from the person's point of view, it might be consistent and complete. It's just that we can't peek into people's hearts, we can only guess. Mrs. Halder interrupted her. Do you have any ideas? Yinlu took another breath and took the initiative to flip through the materials. She spent a few minutes and found two rather special examples in the third type of materials. During the Ocean Sky Cloud City incident, Luo Nan, Black Beetle, Puppeteer, Snake Tongue, and the others had a relatively long exchange during the deadlock stage. The contents were all related to formatting theory, such as order frames, gear coupling, and so on. Even further back, during the Fudong Avenue Frost River reality incident, he and Fairchild, who had yet to be identified as friend or foe, engaged in a cultivation discussion that was completely incompatible with the atmosphere. And when I looked through the communication records of the time, Luo Nan had an argument with the support personnel of the Xia City branch. The logic was disjointed, making communication difficult. Of course, there were elements of formatting theory interspersed within. That's right. Yinlu clenched her fists as she let out a low cry. She was a bit annoyed, but she was even more excited. Actually, Mrs. Halder had long ago categorized all of this information. It was the same as giving her the most clear guidance. When the frequency was in sync, her train of thought naturally connected and flowed smoothly. I overlooked one point before. Formatting theory. This was the foundation of Luo Nan's existence. It was the foundation that separated him from external social relations. It was the foundation that was truly internalized. And the process of internalizing formatting theory should be the core element that influenced the composition of his personality. Then, I must start from the interaction between him and formatting theory. Yes, it can't be pure theory. There is also the enormous social and interpersonal pressure associated with it. Mrs. Halder's expression did not change. Her fingertips moved forward through a series of documents, finally stopping at a certain node. Luo Nan's formal contact with formatting theory should have been over 5 years ago. He was 10 years old at the time. A 10-year-old child with no foundation, no investment, no support, yet he resisted the enormous pressure to learn and inherit his grandfather's theory and grudges. There should be a sufficiently powerful motivation, right? Ian didn't hesitate to respond. His family changed greatly when he was young. His grandfather, father, mother, and practically all of his immediate family members were caught in the maelstrom of formatting theory. They were even annihilated. This stimulation was enough. You just mentioned the interaction. Formatting theory has the value of allowing him to continue researching it in depth. Also, there is the effect of empathy. Through research, he can converse with his relatives and elders. This is an extremely important psychological compensation. Of course, it is also a driving force. Mrs. Halder raised an eyebrow. So we need to consider what he has experienced in this series of processes. We need to consider what he has obtained. I remember that before Luo Nan made his debut, his results were a series of neurological drugs. How did he obtain them? Ian closed her eyes slightly. She put herself in Luo Nan's shoes and thought for a moment. She answered her own question. I heard that Luo Nan didn't have the conditions to test drugs. He could only use himself as a test subject. Of course, this process was filled with endless failures. It was extremely dangerous. He even struggled on the line between life and death. There was certainly anxiety, panic, self-doubt, and so on during this process. There were enormous sources of negative emotions. Mrs. Halder's voice entered her ears. But he has walked all the way to where he is now. He has obtained absolute accomplishments. So he has also obtained powerful self-confidence. No, that's wrong. Ian Lee's eyes were still closed. She denied her initial inference. This was because there weren't many circumstances that matched Luo Nan's performance in reality. He wasn't a proud and self-confident person. It is said that the basis of his series of research and experiments all came from his grandfather's notes. In that case, he doesn't trust himself. He trusts his grandfather's theory, formatting theory. Ian suddenly opened her eyes. That's right. From Luo Nan's perspective, researching formatting theory is tantamount to having an endless conversation with formatting theory. He is endlessly receiving the guidance of his grandfather. He is endlessly overcoming challenges, obtaining sufficient positive feedback from them, and he continues to strengthen his confidence and dedication towards this theory. At the same time, the process of loneliness has given him no reference to compare himself to. It has strengthened his mentality by a factor of 2. So this has turned him into a person who has internalized the ideals of formatting theory. He has used the ruler of ideals to measure things internally and externally, to others and to himself. So, this isn't a mask of alienation. It's a mask of ideals. He is a young man who uses theoretical research every day to converse with his grandfather and his parents. Laughing and cursing in anger, warm and cold, and other socializing traits are really useless. It would be better to use formatting theory to evaluate and test him. If there's meaning, then he'll research. If there's no meaning, then he'll ignore it. This is the standard by which he conducts his judgment. This is his true dominant mask. Chapter 630. She roughly understood the classification of Luo Nan's persona masks. There were far too many examples that she could refer to. The persona mask was essentially an archetype theory. Once the archetype was extracted, she could always find similar cases that corresponded with it. People like Luo Nan have existed since ancient times. Lo wanted to make a further analysis. What followed next seemed to be much easier. After all, even if she ignored all sorts of medical cases, a few famous people could still reflect each other. This was especially true in the East Asian cultural area with its long history of civilization. There were far too many famous people throughout history who wore a persona mask. Li's thoughts spun and she thought of a fellow who was quite similar to Luo Nan. This person was a famous historian and politician. He belonged to the conservative faction. His mind was filled with patriarchal principles. He shut himself in a basement to write books for 15 years. The relevant concepts were completely internalized. Later on, when he was in power and governed the country, he would only listen to his ideas. He became a typical representative of people who talked reason behind closed doors. Don't casually bring out examples. Don't do stupid things like using words to destroy the meaning. Mrs. Halder saw through Li's thoughts. She didn't let her thoughts wander too far. Luo Nan himself possesses an extremely special nature. No famous historical figure would have a semi-philosophical system like formatting theory, where the mighty power belongs to the self. Moreover, it can be practiced, applied, and modified at any time. Modified. Lo was a bit stunned. Wasn't Luo Nan's persona mask an extreme paranoia towards formatting theory? In this way, he should be like that extremely conservative historian. He couldn't change the laws of his ancestors in the slightest. Oh, hold on. There seems to be a problem with the direction. Mrs. Halder didn't test Lo any further. She straightforwardly expressed her opinion. Perhaps Luo Nan himself doesn't believe that formatting theory is completely correct. This can be seen from his attitude during the lecture on the 14th. Back then, his speech was quite cautious. He always used self-mockery and jokes to dispel the extreme authority of formatting theory. Let's not talk about the more complicated background for now. From the analysis of these circumstances and the information we know, he is very stubborn towards formatting theory. However, he doesn't have a particularly paranoid view towards whether formatting theory is correct or not. In the end, his stubbornness towards formatting theory is just a kind of empathy. The ideals of formatting theory are just a mask he uses to treat his imaginary close relatives. This is because he only has this mask to choose from when facing his grandfather and parents in the void. To put it more bluntly, he is only courting. The word courting was a rather sensitive word. There were two ways to interpret it in the dictionary, and what the two first oblatums were communicating was obviously the more ancient kind, which was simply seeking affection. Is it a need for emotions and belonging? Lo took the initiative to analyze using Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Madame Halder agreed. You can say it that way. There is a high probability that Luo Nan himself is on the third level. He urgently needs the comfort of the relevant emotions. This is a pretty good starting point. But soon, she changed the topic, but at the same time, you have to understand the influence of empathy. After a long period of empathy, to a certain extent, he was the projection of his grandfather and parents' needs. He wanted to fulfill the wishes of his closest kin, which made his needs much greater than that of a normal person. In such a situation, He would most likely have the problem of being closely involved in the situation and might not understand what he really needed. If we start from the emotional aspect, it might seem like a straight line, but it might actually be the most difficult path. This was equivalent to denying Yin Li's thoughts. Yin Li's eyebrows knitted together. She felt that it was a bit of a pity, after all, it's a core element. Mrs. Halder's lips hooked slightly. We aren't psychologists. We have no reason to treat him. Am I right? Okay, this reason was quite strong. Yin Lu was dumbfounded. Of course, Yin Lu understood Mrs. Halder's true meaning. If Luo Nan's core driving force was said to be courting, then the various personality masks were the outer muscles and bones. Using courting as the foundation to expand his mental power would form a permeating influence on all the personality masks. But this influence was distorted by his primal instincts and other factors, forming a bewildering barrier that Luo Nan himself might not be clear about. So he still relied on the personality mask, both consciously and unconsciously, when it came to dealing with people and matters. In front of this defensive maze, the scalpel that was suitable for surgery might not be suitable for psychological attacks. Yin Lu wasn't dejected. Instead, she felt that her thoughts were becoming clearer and clearer. Of course, her boss was far better than her boss. With her boss protecting her, she tried to continue deducing in a different direction. Then we can only start from the mask. Go from shallow to deep. Which mask? Of course it's the concept mask. There's no harm in being more specific. Yes, boss. Yin Lu wasn't stingy with her words. She narrated her train of thought, allowing her boss to examine, refer, and verify. I'm using the method of elimination. Even if I can't be considered the dominant position of the concept mask, the other two masks need not be mentioned. The strong mask is too straightforward and simple. There's no way to beat around the bush. No matter who wins or loses, one side is bound to be smashed to pieces. It's not suitable. As for the weak mask, we can only start from emotions. The reason we can't do this is because there are too many uncontrollable factors, boss. Plus, under the influence of the core driving force of courting, we can deduce that this mask is actually an important source of replenishment for the psychological needs of courting. It looks weak, but it's actually extremely selfish and sensitive. I'm afraid that the concept mask on the other side will also be staring at us while we stare at this mask. If we aren't careful, we'll make a mistake and cause trouble. Mrs. Halder nodded slightly. Then we can only use the concept mask. Yes. Is there a better reason? Stability. The greatest advantage of the concept mask is stability. Mrs. Halder gave a smile that wasn't a smile. Are you sure? I'm sure. Yin Li's thoughts reached this point, and she already grasped the pearl of wisdom. During the formation process of the concept mask, Luo Nan was in an extreme environment. He lacked a sense of security, and he lacked true communication. Therefore, there's a high probability that he's a latent perfectionist with obsessive-compulsive symptoms. Sometimes, he'll be extremely anxious, impatient, and weak. This matches with my previous analysis. But due to the special characteristics of the concept mask, the pressure of the symbiotic emotional and psychological elements will shift to other masks. This will become a high-probability event. For example, anxiety, panic, and weakness will be thrown to the weak mask. Ego, pride, and so on will be thrown to the strong mask. The elements left behind in the concept mask are relatively perfect. The more perfect it is, the more likely it will become the basis and yardstick for judgment. In this way, of the three main masks, the concept mask will inevitably be the core. The weak mask and the strong mask will wait for an opportunity to appear. From Luo Nan's daily behavior, he would be fine in a relatively simple situation. He would use the weak mask in front of friends and family to obtain sympathy and love. He would use the strong mask to erupt in front of a great enemy from the inner world, killing his way through. At this time, the two masks are relatively stable. His behavior and train of thought are easy to estimate. But the problem is that these are two completely different concepts and methods. I can't find a point of compromise between them. It would be fine if the logic of behavior was completely different from that of the inner world and that of the secular world. But there are quite a few overlaps. This creates a barrier. It creates a separation and a tear in behavior. Once the situation becomes complicated, for example in the water bar, where Big Mouth Chow of the Divine Research Society was disrespectful to his mother, the weak mask and the strong mask instantly switch. Luo Nan wanted to kill Big Mouth Chow, but his target was just an ordinary person with enmity. And because of Fei Jin's interference, the situation didn't reach its worst state. In this way, the strong mask wasn't completely suitable, and the weak mask didn't have the space to make an appearance. A tear was created, and the concept mask naturally filled in this gap. Luo Nan made a judgment based on the concept mask. Big Mouth Chow wasn't worth analyzing and pondering. There was no need to waste energy on him and create more trouble. So he restrained his emotions, and Big Mouth Chow was able to preserve his life. In those few seconds, whether it was the weak mask or the strong mask, all of them revealed their unstable characteristics. Only the concept mask became the basis for Luo Nan's behavior. Yin Li's analysis took a long time, but the result was extremely clear. Though this is just an independent incident, I believe that a careful analysis of all of Luo Nan's related incidents will lead to this conclusion. Any long-term contact with his weak mask or strong mask, under the influence of many factors, will ultimately face the judgment of the concept mask. Rather than this, it would be better to make preparations to communicate with the concept mask from the very beginning. This way, the uncertainties will be reduced to the minimum. Mrs. Halder listened quietly. She no longer tidied up the materials. In the end, she even narrowed her eyes. Her face was like an ancient well without ripples, concealing all of her emotions. Yin Li had been brimming with confidence when she made a long speech, but she felt an inexplicable lack of confidence when she saw this situation. "Boss, did I say something wrong?" "No, you didn't. Unless we are able to squeeze into Luo Nan's circle of friends and family in the first instance, this is the only path we can take." Mrs. Halder opened her eyes, but her gaze was cast toward the neon-changing night sky outside the window. "I was just thinking that headquarters of the Ability User Society, as well as a few other people, were in a rush to appear. They didn't complete their task, but they did leave us plenty of references. We can be considered lucky, but will we succeed in one fell swoop? Or will we become one of the many examples for others to analyze and ridicule?" "Boss." Yin Lo was shocked and at a loss. She didn't know why Mrs. Halder had suddenly sighed with emotion. Those who predict others also predict others. Those who know others don't necessarily know themselves. Only with this kind of self-awareness can we face the future with a good attitude. Mrs. Halder chuckled. Her gaze turned to Yin Li's youthful, tender, and beautiful face. "Let's do things according to your train of thought. Come up with a plan tonight and let me see it tomorrow morning. Oh right. Take Fei Jin home first. Don't let anything go wrong." With that, she stood up and walked out of the room. "Boss? You're going out to relax." Chapter 631. It was already 2:00 in the morning. The main restaurant of the Starry Sky Club was temporarily quiet. As the manager, Sun Jiayi didn't hesitate to use her privilege to give herself a day off. She took her new prey back to Xia City for fun. Walking in the empty underground garage, they talked and laughed. It was inevitable that they would have some physical contact. Sun Jai didn't know which detail aroused her desire. She suddenly pressed the young female model against the hood of the car. Her hands moved up and down as the model groaned in pain. The female model was startled and struggled instinctively. "Godmother, this is the surveillance area." Sun Jai didn't even raise her head. Only her laughter came from the place where they touched. "Enjoy yourself in time. Be timely." The female model didn't struggle and half of her clothes were taken off. She didn't know what to do. Suddenly, the one on top of her stopped moving. Their bodies were squeezed together and slightly trembled with their breaths. "Godmother?" the female model asked in a daze. "That's why I said this kind of problem will happen if I'm not timely." Sun Jai sighed and straightened up. She inserted her fingers into her short but thick hair and combed it a little. Then, her smile was bright and brilliant. Even though she was old enough to be the mother of the female model, her carefree and casual attitude was far beyond the pretentious handsome men and beautiful women in the circle. She patted the female model's cheek. "Plans can't keep up with changes. Something is coming. Go back to the club and have a rest. I'll come to you after I deal with things." The female model was pulled up. She was confused and let Sun Jai tidy up her clothes. Sun Jai's actions were gentle and affectionate. She was a little moved. "Godmother, I'll accompany you," Sun Jai just smiled. At this time, the butterfly door of the sports car opened. She gave the female model another gentle kiss and then sat in the car, isolated from the outside world. The sports car roared. It drove out of the parking space and sped up in the underground garage. In the car, Sun Jai looks at the rearview mirror. Of course, she is not looking at her goddaughter, who is still confused behind the car. She wants to confirm whether the person who made her get into the car, licked the back of her neck with invisible flames, and threatened her life is the person she guesses. There was a figure in the rearview mirror. But just by looking at his face, it was an unfamiliar face that he had never seen before. It was a young married woman. She was somewhat good-looking and her makeup was exquisite, but it was hard to recognize her. Even though Sun Jai had undergone strict memory training, she still hesitated for a moment before confirming that she had indeed never met this person before. However, the flickering flames in his eyes gave Sun Jai more confidence. Directly oppressing the medulla oblongata, disrupting the blood vessel's activity, but it seems to exist but not exist, and enter but not enter. Such exquisite control of flames. "Madam." In the back seat, the young woman's lips curled up. It wasn't a particularly stunning face, but because of this micro-expression, it brought about an extraordinary aura. Sun Jai confirmed it and sighed, "Madam, where do you want to go?" The young woman casually said, "Anywhere. I'm bored and want to talk to someone." "All right." Sun Jai's index finger tapped on the steering wheel twice, and the car's AI kicked in, entering autopilot mode. This sort of basic function was fine, but why didn't it do its job when she wanted it to guard against theft? Sun Jai sighed again, but she didn't turn her head. She propped one hand on the steering wheel and continued combing her hair with the other. Her body language carried a bit of helplessness. "Madam, we actually don't need to meet in this manner. Even if we want to be safe, we can just use a ready-made tool like Fei Jin. Right now in Xia City, there are less and less soul envoys of your order. It's too much of a pity to use them and then scrap them. It's nothing. Compared to an insignificant soul envoy, it would be a real pity if your identity as multifaceted were to crumble." "Oh." Sun Jai, otherwise known as multifaceted, stopped what she was doing. Through the rearview mirror and the soul envoy, she locked gazes with Madame Halder, who was tens, hundreds of kilometers away. "Madam, are you still brooding over what happened at the seaside villa? Believe me, the Order of Souls." "Don't worry about the Order of Souls. I came here today to express my gratitude. That persona intelligence gave us a very important inspiration. It also allowed us to clearly define the entry point for our work in the near future. It was excellent. Sun Jai raised an eyebrow. You call this gratitude? Oh, I'm sorry. This is probably an overreaction from eating shitty chocolate. The scorching sensation at the back of her neck showed no signs of disappearing. It even increased. It was like the endless accumulation of negative emotions beneath Sun Jai's smile. Therefore, Sun Jai was like a gold medal after-sales service. No matter how great the customer's resentment was, she would always maintain her smile. Madam, based on our good business reputation, I feel that we can use a more appropriate method to deal with this problem. If the intelligence is flawed, we can discuss it further. If it doesn't work out, we can always go through the process of a refund. I said it before. The intelligence is excellent. But the more it is so, the more vexed I become towards your disgraceful behavior of marrying a woman to more than one marriage and the intentions behind it. This was true fire. Sun Jai could even smell the strange smell of charred hair at the back of her head. There might even be the fragrance of meat mixed within. Sun Jai didn't blink. Her smile didn't change. Think about my nickname, Madam. Forgive me for being rude, but I'm not a full-time intelligence agent for your order. Madam Halder also sent a smile through the sole envoy. However, the multifaceted, I know, is a top-notch broker and intelligence expert who can cooperate with many large and medium-sized organizations, including the Blood Flame Order. He should have the corresponding professional qualities. But look at what you've done. You set up the persona intelligence report as a group message and gave it to almost everyone in your intelligence circle. Sun Jai had no choice but to interrupt. Madam, it's my freedom to choose how I sell it. Furthermore, I've already stated this before I sold it. I admit that persona is expensive, and the content inside is also half-baked. But right now, Mr. Luo is the focus of the entire world. His intelligence is worth this price, even if it's just a summary article. A small premium is a very standard market practice. I believe that for all parties with interests, including the Blood Flame Order, this isn't much. Chapter 632. Sun Jai finally blinked. Hint. Inside the carriage, Madame Halder's will transformed into a low vibration in the young woman's throat. You said to everyone, start from the angle of the mask, and that was the basic method to uncover the true value of the information. It was exactly according to your train of thought that Ian Lo and I took less than an hour to complete the clues and perfect the logic. The two of us can solve the problem. With your ability, can't you do it with a few psychologists? Once it's complete, the value of the information will definitely soar, and the profits will be 10 times more than what it is now. Why didn't you do such a good thing? Sun Jai pressed her forehead and smiled helplessly. Madam, hearing you say that makes my heart ache. I'm afraid I've lost a lot of money in this business. Hiss. Speak properly. No matter how healthy your cardiovascular function is, if your medulla oblongata is burned through, it will be meaningless. Under the powerful pressure of the yin flames, Sun Jai's breathing became chaotic. Her heart beat wildly, and her brain lacked oxygen. She became dizzy and numb. Even so, she forced herself to maintain a smile and looked directly at the flickering flames in the rearview mirror. Madam, you think too highly of me. The burning sensation and pressure at the back of her neck eased. Sun Jai seized the opportunity to spit out all the words she had been suppressing in her chest. You and Deputy Officiant Ian are both top-notch figures in the inner world. How can you force others to do what you can? Besides, I only named you because I saw Mr. Luo's age and dull personality. It doesn't match your great reputation, so I thought of it. This time, it was Sun Jai's turn to be interrupted. The young woman's original voice rang out, conveying Madame Halder's will. It had nothing to do with Sun Jia's defense. Of course, I think highly of you. Our cooperation has been on and off for 15 years. Perhaps at that time, you were only at the age of your goddaughter. I have many goddaughters. Madam, which one are you talking about? Sun Jia's forehead and back were already drenched in cold sweat. This was a natural reaction of her body, and she couldn't control it. Only the smile on her face was nearly perfect. Knowing that Sun Jia was still spouting nonsense, Madame Halder no longer made meaningless threats. The woman in the front row had already used facts to prove that ordinary interrogation techniques had no significant effect on her. Madame Hard said, "From what I know, the name multifaceted has quite a bit of status in the intelligence circles of Xia City, but there aren't many people who know of your true identity. Do you remember how I found out about your identity? It's because of an investment." Oh. Sun Jia's gaze swept over the rearview mirror, and she saw that the eyes behind the lenses were fiery and cold, so piercing that she almost narrowed her eyes. Since the other party had directly pointed it out, it would be too impolite to try to go around it. Yes, I remember. At that time, you were expanding your business and needed a large sum of money, and I happened to have a client who was looking for a project with a higher return on investment. Then, I did my job and became the intermediary between the two of you. After a while, you got to know each other. The young woman in the back seat laughed. How broad-minded. Oh. In my memory, I contacted that investor very quickly and started a deeper cooperation. I tossed you to the side and saved quite a bit of intermediary fees. But what made people sigh with emotion was that you easily acquiesced, and everyone maintained a cooperative relationship. Nothing went wrong. Sun Jia lifted the short hair on her forehead, and her smile deepened. Madam, have you always harbored a guilty conscience? I only remember that when the order withdrew from Xia City in a panic, I took the initiative to contact you. Of course, I knew very well that you wouldn't be of any help at that time. I just wanted to use you to try and convince that investor to continue to invest. But you disconnected at that time. Oh, I'm sorry. I had too much fun that night. In the following period of time, my cooperation with you was completely severed. This was completely in sync with that investor's attitude. Madam, my business is limited to Xia City. But why is it that when the 2000th of a miss incident occurred? More accurately speaking, when the Hill of Bones where Jean Tong was buried appeared in the outer seas of Xia City, our relationship suddenly became closer. Sun Jia could only sigh. Business is business. Madam, why do you have to be so calculative? The sports car shuttled back and forth on the high-speed maglev roads of the mountainous region, but the car suddenly sank into a state of silence. The young woman's soul sender in the back seat seemed to have lost her soul once more. She didn't respond. Sun Jia couldn't help but have a thought. If she were to jump out of the car right now, what were the chances of her escaping this life-threatening trouble? This silence lasted for 5 seconds, or maybe even 10. Only then did Madame Halder's will manifest once more through the voice of the young woman in the back seat. Every time I hear the words business is business, I feel a chill in my heart. But when it comes from your own mouth, it feels completely different. The tone was gloomy and cold. It was vastly different from the overbearing feeling from before. This caused Sun Jia to react a bit slower. Before she could figure out how to divert this dangerous topic, she was pierced by the flaming gaze of the car's rearview mirror. This soul sender was definitely crippled. An indescribable thought popped up in Sun Jia's mind. Then she heard the other party's voice again. You don't have to explain or hide it anymore. In the short term, my judgment of your identity will not change. I came to find you tonight and spoke to you. There was no element of probing in it. I just wanted to inform you, and vent. Madam, I hope you can convey my attitude and the corresponding judgment to that person. I'm talking about the judgment of her current investment project. In the car, only the low voice of the soul sender reverberated. You didn't give me the complete information. Instead, you acted like a foolish and greedy businessman. You dug out a gold mine but haven't fully explored its reserves yet. You couldn't wait to package it up and sell it off. You even married one woman to another. Do you feel that this gold mine is more effective and that you won't be able to sell it for a good price if you sell it later? Or do you not think highly of the gold mine's reserves, so you don't hesitate to ruin your reputation in order to make money first? Or do you want to deliberately muddy the waters and obtain even greater benefits from a level unknown to others? Out of respect for that investor, I choose the third option. Sun Jai also fell silent. She no longer tried to correct Madame Halder's train of thought. The information you gave me seems to be a half-finished product. In reality, although the value of the complete information is high, it is very difficult to sell it for a suitable reason. The half-finished information doesn't have this kind of sensitivity. Instead, it is easier to conceal your intentions. Some people will mistakenly believe that gold has been dug out from the sand, but they will ignore the direction behind it. After all, Luo Nan is quite simple. His personality, strong points, and weak points can be discovered as long as one puts in a bit of thought. And it is because he is simple that there are only a limited number of places that can be used. If one side exerts force, the results will be obvious. If two sides exert force, there will be variables. And if more than three sides exert force together, it will become complete chaos. Under the interference of many sides, the designs and schemes of each side will not be able to achieve the desired results. The struggle surrounding Luo Nan will only become more complicated. Madame Halder took the initiative to stop and catch her breath upon speaking to this point. She even extinguished the invisible fire on the back of Sun Jai's neck. Her attitude seemed to be easing up. Her originally straight back leaned back, making her look more like a passenger hitching a ride. She even asked for some opinions. Aren't there too many elements of conjecture? Sun Jai thought for a moment and said, there has to be a source of inspiration. A bit of stimulation or something. Yeah. There are two sources. The first is Yin Lo. She said that the uncertainties need to be reduced to a minimum. I have a very bad feeling about this. The second one. Do you know that Luo Nan and Tian Bang ran into each other on the streets tonight? I haven't received any tip-offs yet. But Madam said that they ran into each other by chance. I think that it really was a coincidence. Perhaps. But with Tian Bang's intelligence, how could he not know that communicating with Luo Nan in a hurry would only irritate him? He wouldn't achieve any results. And with his personality, he would probably rather bump into He Yuan's cold rebuke than engage in a meaningless entanglement with Luo Nan. So I believe that even if this encounter was a coincidence, he must have made some preparations in his mind. Perhaps he has grasped the principles and techniques of communicating with Luo Nan. Or perhaps he is still a bit lacking and wants to do some verification. He must have a share of your information. Now we can make the final inference. I once believed that you were making a fuss about Luo Nan. You used him as bait to draw away the attention of others, making it convenient for you to act. But then I thought of something she once told me. Investors act sneakily for the sake of controlling costs. But in the end, they always need an enthusiastic response. After a brief pause, the young woman in the back seat spat out a clear word from her lips. The blood flame order has been forcefully stopped before they can obtain an enthusiastic response. But you guys are already reaping the rewards from Luo Nan, right? If this is the case, I can roughly guess the position of that investor. The sports car had already driven onto the ring highway by now. The northern boundary of Xia City was higher in altitude. Looking through the front windshield of the car, most of the city district of Xia City was converged into a sea of lights. It was truly beautiful. and the mountainous region the car drove through became a scene of thick ink. It was connected to the faraway corners of the stars. The sports car pierced through the barrier of the air, whistling through the air with a humming sound. It was as if it had crossed the boundary between the wilderness and civilization in an instant. It was as if it had traveled from one dimension to another. Nothing seemed to have changed, but in reality, the endlessly expanding air pressure within the sports car was like an incorporeal bomb. It could explode at any moment. Sun Jiai's voice came from the front driver's seat at a certain point before the explosion. It was just that it carried a peculiar tone. I've always been amazed by your gambling decisiveness. At the same time, I have reservations about your self-destructing inner core. This kind of heart isn't a good place to be. In the back seat, the soul sender suddenly raised his head. The eyes reflected in the rearview mirror were truly burning. Chapter 633. It was not even 7 o'clock in the morning. The winter solstice had just passed, and the early morning of Xia City did not provide enough light. The faint light from the sky could not penetrate the lake, so the bottom of the lake was still dark from the public activity area. Only when the enormous devil ray swam past the protective glass did the water become somewhat lively. Xie Junping did his morning exercise all the way to school. He bought some snacks on the way and arrived at North Shore Gear. He arrived relatively early. There was no one here except for Shuelei, who woke up earlier than him, and Cat Eyes, who was yawning. Cat Eyes had it the hardest out of everyone. It was her turn to be on duty last night. Faced with a beauty, Xie Junping had to find something to say. "Where's Teacher Luo?" He. Xie Junping immediately understood. He's in seclusion again. Cat Eyes curled her lips. Nth time he pulled an all-nighter. Shuelei defended her. "Sister Cat Eyes, didn't you say that he just received some important information last night?" "What information?" Xie Junping was very curious. Cat Eyes yawned again. "It seems to be a collection of theses written by his mother when she was alive. Senior Sister Qingwen's theses can be found in the school library and journal websites. It seems to be an unfinished work. It hasn't been officially published. It's the present he received from the meeting with Professor Pan last night." No wonder. Xie Junping understood and expressed an optimistic attitude. "A few theses. They're unfinished. They won't take long. They're just mementos." Cat Eyes extended 4 fingers, 4 petabytes. "Those documents are 4 petabytes in size." Xie Junping was smashed silly. 4 petabytes. With such a size, even the most realistic virtual reality documents would have hundreds to thousands of hours of playback time. Let alone ordinary words and pictures. Cat Eyes chuckled. He really sank in. When he comes out, this semester will be over. Xie Junping immediately cried out. "Don't. The real-time check-in system is getting more and more perverted. 3 to 5 days is fine, but if he really is in seclusion for a long time, even if I bring out the headmaster, it won't work." Cat Eyes gave Xie Junping a rare pat on the shoulder. "Might as well suspend him from school." "Humph, I thought he was a little sober, but it turns out he's still in a daze." What a waste of breath. The beauty's intimate attitude made Xie Junping's brain heat up, and he couldn't control his mouth. "That means you still haven't given me enough." In the next second, Xie Junping fell to the ground along with the chair. He was confused. This was the only drawback after becoming half an insider. Cat Eyes and the others knew that he was no longer a little newbie who would die with a single poke. They did not hold back when they attacked. It was a pity that he had not truly awakened yet. What would they do if something bad happened to him? Xie Junping was about to protest loudly when Jerry, who had just successfully stolen some snacks, happily stepped over his chest and used his face as a stepping stone to jump forward. F***ck, unfilial son. Xie Junping spat twice and casually scooped up a leg instead of Jerry, who had maxed out his agility. Hey, Nanster. Ignoring Xie Junping's sorry state, Jerry was quite excited. He tugged at the person's trousers and climbed up. In the blink of an eye, he scurried up to the person's chest. The person took advantage of the situation and pulled the muskrat into his embrace. Beautifully done. When Xie Junping heard these words, he simply wanted to use some strength to knock Luo Nan down. However, Luo Nan had already awakened. He relied on his fleshly body cultivation to take root beneath his feet. He was not someone a little newbie +1 level ability user could shake. Helpless, Xie Junping slapped the floor and grumbled as he struggled to get up. Cat Eyes was a bit baffled. You're in a pretty good mood. Luo Nan sat in front of the bar and revealed a smile to everyone. His smile was more persuasive than any words. Cat Eyes became even more baffled. Not even 8 hours had passed. He had just slept. No, this bro didn't sleep at all last night. How could a person's mood undergo such an earth-shattering change? Cat Eyes blinked and asked subconsciously, have you finished looking through all the information? Luo Nan picked up a snack and stuffed it into his mouth. He answered vaguely, how is that possible? There are so many. It would be hard to go through them in 2 or 3 years. Take your time. I'll look through them bit by bit. Don't overlook anything. Cat Eyes reached out to probe his forehead, but Luo Nan slapped her hand down in a bad mood. The group looked at each other in dismay. They had no idea where Luo Nan's appearance of great enlightenment came from. Actually, if the 2 first oblatums of the Blood Flame Order, who had been busy all night, were invited over, they would be able to obtain the correct answer very quickly. They might even be able to make further deductions. However, no one here was omniscient and omnipotent. Everyone could only console themselves. In any case, this was a good thing. Afterwards, the group gathered around the bar to eat breakfast. Or perhaps it could be said to be the dessert before the meal. The food that Xie Junping had casually bought was just enough to fill the gaps between the teeth of these ability users. The true breakfast was brought over by Chinikuan, who was responsible for taking over the shift. Compared to normal people, it was at least 10 servings. There was even a meticulously brewed medicinal porridge inside. It had extraordinary effects and was expensive. It was hard to buy it on the market. All of this had to be shared with the entire team. Only Luo Nan, a dog who got rich from teaching, could afford it. At least half of the reason why Xie Junping woke up early was because of this medicinal porridge. Not only did Chinikuan bring the breakfast porridge, he also brought the latest news. Yesterday, the Xia City military sent a letter. They wish to cooperate with the branch to develop new business. It should be related to the purification of the mental plane. Cat Eyes laughed in spite of herself. When did the military start managing propaganda? Are they trying to meddle with ideology? Are they trying to rebel? It's not a rebellion. I'm saying that it has nothing to do with ideology. Chinikuan was careless and let Cat Eyes fly away. He laughed bitterly and was about to explain when Luo Nan suddenly spoke up beside him. It's the scavenger. Yes, that's it. The cleansing and purification of illegal orders and black witchcraft in the Abyss region. It's to lower the rate of the so-called murder in the inner world. Chinikuan came to a realization after speaking. You know about it. Vice President, he mentioned it. No, Shengtian Bang said it last night. I bumped into him on the road. Luo Nan responded and didn't say anything else. Shuelei, who had been eating with his head down, interrupted. He must have seen the use of the Blood Intent Ring's fortress. Last night, Brother Papercut and the others played with firecrackers the entire night. They had a lot of fun. Midnight even left a message in the group. She wants Nanster to develop some sail, thruster module, and a cannon and giant ship. Luo Nan grunted, I saw it too. I can give it a try later. The configuration is easy to talk about, but to turn it into a product, it will most likely take the form of a paper talisman. Chapter 634. Cat Eyes and Chinikuan knew very well that Luo Nan had recently been struggling with the configuration domain. Luo Nan's main direction of study was basic research, not applied development. Therefore, the research and development of the Blood Intent Ring and its surrounding products were no longer on Luo Nan's mind. He had to wait for Gao Meng and Papercut to come knocking on his door before he could discuss it. But in the end, this was still a matter of a single thought. If teacher Luo Nan was in a good mood, it wasn't a big deal for him to say a few more words. Cat Eyes just seized the opportunity to ridicule him. Chinikuan, Luo Nan, and the others all automatically skipped over her. Luo Nan was in a pretty good mood this morning. Next, he continued to explain the current situation of the Ring of Blood Wolf Fortress. The talisman cheat can only be a temporary product. If the fortress platform only needs 3 to 5 functions, it can still be of some use. Once the demand for functions increases, just thinking about how to distribute them will be troublesome. Cat Eyes made a tch sound. It will definitely be troublesome on the society side. But if it's on Tianbang's side, then it won't be a problem. Chinikuan nodded in agreement. It's the military, after all. Their organization is very strong. They definitely have the confidence. Xie Junping was amused by their conversation. He swallowed the hot porridge with great difficulty and chuckled. Every time we go on a mission, we have to distribute weapons, equip ourselves, and then we have to hang talismans on them. Could it be that this is the legendary divine possession, the descent of heavenly soldiers? Perhaps the old methods of talismans are similar in nature. Shuelei was not superstitious, but he was keen on finding modern explanations for traditional projects. This was obviously due to his dojo background. Cat Eyes took the opportunity to combine similar items. This is Mr. Gao Daming's favorite topic. Old Yu has also researched this topic and has even published a thesis. In just a few sentences, the topic had wandered off. This was a normal conversation. Everyone gathered around the bar and chatted aimlessly until the other students arrived one after another. They entered and left, and the private space was completely occupied. At this moment, Ruiwen also arrived. The little girl had to eat breakfast at home to appease the elders. She left home a bit late today. There was less than 20 minutes before class started when she arrived at school. Even so, she still made a special trip to meet Luo Nan. Shuelei looked at his watch. Let's go. If we go now, we'll be able to catch the train. Oh, Nanster, we'll be together for the 3rd period in the morning. Do you need me to sign for you? Luo Nan laughed. I won't make things difficult for Director Xia. I'll go by myself. The group of people looked at each other. TSK, there is indeed a problem. As a senior student who was about to graduate, Xie Junping's schedule was much freer than that of middle school and high school students. He could sit paralyzed in his seat and press his stomach to digest the effects of the medicinal porridge, but his brain and mouth could not stay idle. He watched as Luo Nan and Shuelei entered the elevator. He smacked his lips, feeling rather baffled. This bro was just about to hire someone to hack the sign-in system. How come our teacher Luo was cured without even making a sound? Don't wimpy brats come and go for a while? Cat Eyes chuckled twice. She then greeted Chinikuan and went home to catch up on her sleep. Chinikuan stopped her with a wry smile. Wait, we went too far off topic just now. I almost forgot that Mr. Luo has a vote for the street sweeper. Now, he has a vote in any matter of the branch. Cat Eyes yawned. She was a bit impatient. You can just tell him directly. What does it have to do with me? But if Mr. Luo votes in favor and agrees to cooperate with the military, then it will be impossible. According to the relevant business requirements, he will be very busy for a period of time in the future. The corresponding security plans will need to be changed. Vice President, he hopes to communicate with us first. Cat Eyes raised an eyebrow. Are you sure that a certain person will agree? Yes, it really is possible based on the situation just now. But there's no need to look for me. I'm just being pulled in. I don't have much autonomy. You guys can discuss it and just notify me. Cat Eyes ignored Chin Ikuan's bafflement and walked straight out of gear on the north bank. The cold morning wind blew the fresh air of the jungle in the plaza in front of her. It was quite pleasant. She ignored the sneaky or bold gazes of a group of teenagers and stretched her body to her heart's content. The sunlight permeated through the gaps between the branches and leaves, gently touching her cheeks. It slightly raised the temperature of her skin and made a corner of her heart inexplicably warm. Oh, it couldn't be considered inexplicable. Cat Eyes could roughly sense that this was due to certain elements that hadn't been frozen for a long time within Luo Nan's tightly sealed system. It felt pretty good, but why? Cat Eyes' doubts also existed in Xuelei's mind. During the third morning class, Xuelei and Luo Nan sat together. The two of them didn't pay attention to what the teacher said on the podium. It must be said that Xuelei was an honest child. Normally, no matter how arduous his cultivation tasks were, he would listen to the class and complete the homework. He would earnestly complete all of them. And the reason why such a situation occurred today was because of Luo Nan's abnormal performance. He stared in a daze. Luo Nan's head hadn't been raised since the beginning of class. He opened up the split-page notebook that he always carried with him and placed it on the desk. He flipped it to the flexible e-ink screen page. The screen glowed with a lustrous radiance, forming a work area. A three-dimensional dynamic image file was being projected into the work area. The geometric structure displayed was very simple, and the projection effect was pretty good. It seemed to be rolling around in the palm of Luo Nan's hand, but he couldn't quite understand the markings on it. Luo Nan played this image file over and over again in the entire class, perhaps even the previous two classes. He played it over and over again without the slightest bit of boredom. Perhaps it was a configuration. Xuelei didn't really understand, so he could only make a blind guess. But the problem was, even if it was a configuration, what the hell was this state? From the side, the corner of Luo Nan's mouth was curled up. Sometimes, he even unconsciously cracked open, letting out a chuckle. He was in a completely selfless state. Let alone Xuelei, even the students sitting to the side looked over from time to time. They were defeated by the ceaselessly rotating geometric structure time and time again. In the end, they gave up on understanding and used their gazes to classify Luo Nan as an abnormal person. In the beginning, Xuelei was cursing Luo Nan's mortal eyes. He couldn't recognize gods, Buddhas, immortals, and saints. But later, he saw Luo Nan chuckle more and more often. Sometimes, even his shoulders would shake. In the end, Xuelei was a bit flustered. Nanster, Nanster. Ah, what? Luo Nan shifted his attention in a very normal manner. His face was blank. Xuelei hiccuped a few times, but he still asked directly, "This diagram of yours is a configuration, right? What's so interesting about it?" "This. It's just a fragment. It doesn't have the meaning of a configuration." Luo Nan explained, but he lowered his head and laughed a few times as he spoke. Then Xuelei's ears trembled slightly. A message came from the psychic wave network. It was a recording that Luo Nan had shared with him. A woman's voice entered his ears. It was bright and clear, admit it. You're a negative number dregs in terms of configuration thinking. The more formulas you introduce, the more it proves that your thinking is chaotic. What followed was a man's rebuttal. It was unhurried and not slow, and it even carried a bit of an old-fashioned flavor. Right now, what we need is a complete model. It's mathematical thinking and not hand-drawn. Qingwen, don't squander your talent. A certain someone's talent for mimicry is max. It just so happens that it's long range. Why don't you ask the teacher to give an evaluation? He. Luo Nan propped his forehead with one hand to the side, burying his head in laughter. Shuelei didn't find the humor in this conversation, but the name mentioned made him flabbergasted. This is. Chapter 635. December 30th was a Sunday, the first day of the New Year's Day holiday. The flow of people on the streets soared again. The residents of the surrounding satellite cities also entered the main city area to spend their holidays. The exhaust exhaled by 200 million people raised the temperature of Xia City by 2 degrees, making the body feel more comfortable. Around the Shangding building and the surrounding high-rise buildings, the traffic on the guiding light track shuttled back and forth without beginning or end. Most of them were private cars, but there were also 100-jointed cars that had just been dismantled and landed on various platforms by the traction force. Zhang Yingying got out of a 100-jointed car and walked quickly into the Shangding building. When she climbed the stairs, she stepped on the last bit of red of the setting sun, adding a glazed luster to her white pencil pants and nude high heels, which attracted a lot of attention. But she didn't care about that. She raised her hand to look at her watch and sped up again. In the sound of her heels hitting the ground, she passed through the corridors of the interior floors of the building. After a lot of twists and turns, she finally arrived at the place. Conference room 1135, done. After making sure that she arrived before the appointed time, Zhang Yingying breathed a sigh of relief, adjusted her breathing, and pushed the door open. Ha! The circular conference room that could accommodate about 20 people was unexpectedly empty. There were only 3 or 4 people. Except for a staff member in charge of service, the rest were the same group. Not at the conference table, 2 bodyguards were sitting against the wall. At this time, they turned their heads and greeted her with a smile. Yingying, you're here for a meeting. Big brother, Captain Gao. Zhang Yingying responded with the way she was used to, and then curled her lips. His Majesty said he wouldn't come, but he only gave me half an hour to replace him. I climbed up from the bottom of the sea. While they were chatting, Zhang Yingying's eyes glanced at the young man at the conference table who was obviously a top perception master, but had no reaction to the changes in the outside world. Zhang Yingying gritted her teeth. This guy. The 2 bodyguards laughed, but they had no intention of intervening. After the lecture on the 14th, in addition to the 2 concepts of cage and configuration that shook the world, the several bets that came before and after also painted the whole situation with a strange gossipy color. Many people in the inner world knew that the young genius, Teacher Luo, had a beautiful female guard beside him who was extremely eloquent. She had insulted the senior B-class expert, REE, until she lost her composure and lost all face. As for Xia City, Zhang Yingying's favorable impression of Luo Nan was pretty much an open secret. It was just that Luo Nan, the main character and the core of this matter, didn't seem to have this awareness at all. This young man, who had just turned 16, seemed to always live in a dimension that was difficult for outsiders to understand. Sometimes he was depressed, and sometimes he was in high spirits. He did not seek external help and had his own logic. Luo Nan was earnestly looking at his flexible e-ink screen. He used his finger to open a folder. This was his mother's research data, which he had transferred from Professor Pan's cloud space. The theme of the information was modern architectural design, but for 99% of the world's designers, it was tantamount to a book that they could never understand. In the folder that he had just opened, there were about 7 or 8 different kinds of documents, from the most primitive observation data to intuitive three-dimensional models, including the corresponding analysis and calculation. There were also some ideas that were written down on the spot, recordings of discussions, and even videos left behind. These documents together formed a basic unit. It didn't revolve around design theories or cases, but rather a genuine basic configuration. It was just a fragment that had lost the meaning of the configuration. There were about 3,000 to 4,000 similar units. Together, they formed the accumulation of basic research data on the configuration. This was a gift from the heavens that Luo Nan didn't even dare to dream of. Mom must be watching me from the heavens. Luo Nan couldn't help but fantasize about these things. For the first time, he willingly crawled under the mighty power of fate, loudly praising it. He had once thought that since his mother was able to build a passageway that led to the clouds, she would certainly carry out explorations and research in that bizarre world. Thoughts were thoughts, but he never would have thought that the results of his mother's research were like a light boat crossing a specific path in the long river of time. They formed a predestined intersection with him, who had similarly chosen this path and was doing his best to row forward. The inheritance of fate was the highest reward for his 5 years of life and death struggle. Of course, Luo Nan wouldn't forget. He was very grateful to Professor Pan Wen, who had created, or at least accelerated, this intersection. There was also Tian Tian, Tian Tian, and Tian Tian, as well as all the people within this river of fate who had given him a boost. Hey, didn't you say that you were in a good mood? Why are you becoming more and more aloof? Zhang Yingying finally couldn't hold back. She slapped Luo Nan on the shoulder, announcing her existence. Luo Nan, who was wandering in the river of fate, was slapped onto the shore by Zhang Yingying's slap. He finally turned his head, but the side of his face met with an open lapel of a light-colored short-sleeved suit. He instinctively leaned back and saw a white-collared beauty with quite the intellectual and capable air. Zhang Yingying had one hand on the conference table. Her body leaned forward, and she was very close. She cast a very direct gaze on Luo Nan's face. From Luo Nan's perspective, Zhang Yingying's clothes were more meaningful. This sort of outfit stirred up even more of his memories and emotions. Luo Nan still remembered that just 3 months ago, this was the same person who had disguised herself as a lawyer and boarded the ship that blocked the mountain. She continued to participate and push, making him willingly enter the water. She walked step by step into the deep water, all the way until he entered the river channel that belonged solely to him. She obtained the highest reward. So Luo Nan was very grateful to her. It could be said that he didn't forget his old kindness. Luo Nan couldn't help but laugh. I was just thinking about you. Zhang Yingying was a bit stupefied, but when she saw Luo Nan's expression, she knew that she was thinking too much. Even so, she was still in a bit of a difficult situation for a short period of time. She didn't want to retreat and show weakness. She just subconsciously reached out to touch the flexible screen and opened a document in the folder. It was originally a meaningless action, but the complicated mathematical equation stung her eyes with a couple of glances. Do you understand these? Yeah, not really. Luo Nan was very honest. The information passed down by his mother was very detailed, but the level was also very high. Luo Nan still didn't understand some of the special algorithms involved. He probably needed to search for information or even learn the relevant knowledge on the spot. He would need to grind it down bit by bit. In these 2 days, Luo Nan specially selected recordings and videos to experience them one by one. He only skimmed through the rest of the information. He didn't read it in depth. Even so, he felt dizzy every time he looked at a few sets. It was hard for his mind to continue. Luo Nan laughed when he thought of this. What are you so happy about if you don't understand? Why can't I be happy if I don't understand? Fine. Luo Nan knew this. If it was the past, he would have been grinded to the point of insanity long ago. Just thoroughly understanding his mother's research data required a large amount of time. Uncovering the deeper mysteries of the cloud world was even more distant. Then killing Gong Chi was placed behind these two in order. Wouldn't it be even more meaningless? Luo Nan should be anxious, but right now his mood was strangely tranquil and joyful. Every folder contained detailed and clear information. It recorded the process of his mother's research back in the day. Looking at the daily logs and records, as well as the recordings and videos that appeared from time to time, was like learning and conversing with his mother. So Luo Nan knew. His mother's writing was clear, definite, and concise. But when she scribbled and discussed, it was inevitable that she would hesitate and struggle. Sometimes she would even have a bit of a temper. When she encountered obstacles, she would promptly communicate with others in addition to researching on her own. Most of the time, it was in the form of brainstorming, letting many people participate. Among them were Professor Pan Wen, his grandfather, but most of them were that fellow. They discussed and even argued. They casually drew diagrams or more complex data formulas and so on. Luo Nan could understand some of them, but he couldn't understand some of them at all. But it didn't matter. He just quietly watched from the side. Every time this happened, his mood would be anxious and relaxed. He was like a glutton facing a delicacy. He wanted to swallow it clean in one gulp, but he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to eat it all. He could only taste it bit by bit. This feeling was strange, but it wasn't bad at all. Luo Nan chuckled. His laughter made Zhang Yingying's hair stand on end. And at this time, the door to the conference room was pushed open. A group of people came in one after another. Their gazes naturally focused on Luo Nan and Zhang Yingying. Some of them even revealed secretive smiles. TCH. Zhang Yingying didn't want to be gossip material. She also didn't feel the need to deliberately keep her distance. She immediately pulled out a chair and sat next to Luo Nan. The conference room was quickly filled with people. The last to enter was He Yueyin. She was still dressed conservatively as an office lady. As the outsider for today's conference, Tian Bang entered a second before He Yueyin. He wore a military uniform that was rarely seen. The Major General's gold star on his shoulder made him look extremely sharp. But when he opened his mouth, he still had that relaxed and leisurely appearance. Oh. The protagonist has already arrived. His gaze fell directly on Luo Nan without the slightest bit of concealment. He Yueyin didn't exchange pleasantries. She didn't speak nonsense. She just nodded slightly at Luo Nan after sitting down. She said, "Next we'll have a meeting. We'll discuss the specific matters related to the scavenger project." During yesterday's video conference, the branch team had already reached a consensus. They basically agreed to cooperate with Xia City's government, the garrison force, and the East Sea Military Theater. We'll push forward with the research and development of this project. We invited Major General Tian to this meeting today to ask him to introduce the background of the project in detail. We'll discuss the functional requirements of the project, the technical bottleneck, the research and development plan, and other issues. We'll strive to form a framework and implement it as soon as possible. Her gaze fell on Tian Bang after she finished speaking. Tian Bang understood. He grinned and took over the conversation. "Today I've come here to discuss the scavenger project. Of course it's the first priority. But before that, we can't avoid the convention. We still need to pay our respects." Chapter 636. Right now, the people seated in the conference room included a B-rank power like Gao Meng, the vice president, 2 veteran deputy secretaries, and several members of the technical team. Basically, half of the technical elites of the Xia City branch were here. They all heard Tian Bang's absolute explanation, but no one expressed any dissatisfaction. What was there to doubt? The government and the military had clearly come for Luo Nan's Bloodwill Ring fortress. This was the cornerstone of the cooperation between the two sides. Without this, any other terms would be meaningless. Needless to say, the 1,000-person lecture on the 14th of this month had already established Luo Nan's authoritative position in the mental side. The Bloodwill Ring fortress was anchored in the depths of the Abyss region. Over 90% of the people in the conference room would go there from time to time to experience and research. Right now, there were quite a few people staring at Luo Nan with burning gazes. They wanted to find an opportunity to toss out all the doubts they had accumulated over the past few days, seeking a thorough understanding. Luo Nan did not know about these things, nor did he care. According to common sense, after Tian Bang's flattery, Luo Nan should have said a few polite words to complete the formalities. This was the custom of mutual business flattery. But Luo Nan did not react until Tian Bang finished speaking. He just sat steadily in the middle of the conference room and raised his head, indicating that he was listening to him. That was all. Fortunately, no one raised too high a demand for Luo Nan's conduct, especially Tian Bang himself. He had already experienced Luo Nan's apathy and dullness 2 nights ago, so he just laughed it off. Then he signaled to the staff to turn on the projection equipment and show the finished presentation to the participants. Of course, General Tian was a bit arrogant. He would not waste his breath explaining. The following introductions fell on the shoulders of his accompanying aide. Next, let me introduce the background of the project. The one who stood up to act as the speaker was Lieutenant Colonel Zhu Ling. This young soldier was also an old acquaintance of Luo Nan's. They had even eaten a meal together a few days ago because of the Thunder Falcon dojo. Zhu Ling was different from his own sloppy superior. He always had a serious and upright expression. His figure was ramrod straight like a soldier, and he naturally brought the atmosphere of the conference on the right track. Luo Nan was a bit distracted at this time. The situation before him made him think of the mutant infection incident that he and Peony had dealt with together. There was a time when he had attached his soul to ink and participated in this kind of briefing. It seemed to be much more interesting than this. Another important reason was that the background information provided by the military was nothing new. Although Luo Nan wasn't present at the voting site yesterday, he was able to get a basic understanding of the situation through Tian Bang's prior communication. There weren't too many changes. Zhang Yingying, who was beside him, was a temporary helper who had been brought in when she was in seclusion. She didn't know much about the project, so she listened attentively at first. However, Zhang Yingying was in the most well-informed hidden indigo firm. Her accumulation of information was far from something a newbie like Luo Nan could compare with. She easily drew inferences about other cases from one case and understood the cause and effect. She lost interest and moved closer to Luo Nan to chat in a low voice. In the end, she was still able to keep up with today's main topic. The government and the military have finally found an opportunity. Oh. Luo Nan didn't refuse to whisper to his friend. He also wanted to hear Zhang Yingying's opinion. They have always disliked certain B-class experts and even transcendents from the inner world. I'm talking about the mental side. Especially people like Snake Tongue, who dabble in curses and witchcraft. Of course, there are also those illegal orders. They play with all kinds of blood sacrifices and black masses. Every year, several thousand lives are involved in the inner world murders. They want to control them, but they can't. They can't get any benefits either. Of course, they hate them to the bone. Zhang Yingying's explanation was very close to Tian Bang's, excluding a few subjective descriptions. She chuckled as she spoke, on the side of the government and the military, Old Gao and the others. Oh, and you as well. They are all criminals engaged in illegal construction. It's just that right now they're thinking of enlishment. Illegal construction. I don't think it counts. The Abyss region is more appropriate to call it a land outside of the law or a wilderness of the vast sea. Yes, Mr. Pioneer Luo Nan. In the ability system of the society, the code name of a B-class expert was architect. Some people say it was engineer, but the former was more appropriate. Of course, the fleshly body could be used as well. It wouldn't be wrong to say that the structure of the body and soul was constructed. However, the earliest source of this name was the so-called Abyss region architect. It referred to the mental side building their own house in the Abyss region. Everyone had an intuitive understanding of the vile environment of the Abyss region after the appearance of the fortress. It was absolutely not an easy task to complete the construction of structures there. Even a veteran B-class expert like Gao Meng could only plant simple structures such as the spirit glyph for a short period of time. They couldn't withstand the wind and rain for long periods of time. Even more amazing characters were able to retain some seeds and frames, and then construct more complex structures on top of them. Only transcendents were able to construct semi-permanent structures, forming all sorts of inconceivable effects. Reaching this step, one could already be called a god according to the words of the various orders. Reaching this step, the so-called religious altar residents could already borrow the berserk and inexhaustible power of the Abyss region. Its level and intensity far exceeded the limits of humans, forming a virtuous cycle. But how many transcendents were there in the world? Constructing structures in the Abyss region was so difficult. It was inevitable that some people would come up with crooked ideas. They would forcefully seize a person's essence energy, stimulate a mortal's heart, extract soul strength through black witchcraft, evil sacrifices, and so on. These were the most common methods. There were also dark-sider life forms like the human-faced arachnid. There were also some mutants that possessed special abilities. They were born to stir up trouble in the Abyss region. Due to the special nature of this level, the effects were enormous. Some of them were even vile. This caused the already dangerous and complex Abyss region to become even more foul. Looking at it from this angle, the work of scavengers was indeed necessary. The guide Zhu Ling just so happened to transform the relevant statistical data into an intuitive pie chart. He talked about how many types of illegal constructions were in the Abyss region. He talked about how much direct damage was caused. He talked about how much trouble would radiate to the traditional 3 belts on the mental plane, and so on. Of course, he also talked about the benefits that would be brought to everyone's cultivation and lives after the governance was perfected. In short, he acted as if he had ample reasons and was worthy of trust. Gao Meng, who sat across from Luo Nan, let out a yawn. He was also one of the people who voted last night. He really wasn't interested in these official articles. He squinted his eyes to see Luo Nan and Zhang Yingying chatting happily. Then he thought about how he didn't stop Luo Nan last night. He felt a bit unbalanced in his mind. He knocked on the table. Chapter 637. Gao Meng's words were crude, but his reasoning was not crude. The background and significance of the project could be explained to the heavens, but in the end, it all came down to practicality. The scavenger project had to be guided by technology. No matter how perfect the other ideas were, they were meaningless if they were impractical in terms of technology. Zhu Ling didn't mind his own explanation being interrupted. Instead, he took advantage of the situation to cut into the specific technical link. According to the collected data and user feedback, the functionality of the fortress is quite simple and crude. It's like a fixed fort. It only has 2 basic attributes, defense and attack. If it wants to truly display its usefulness, this fort must possess mobility, probing, and other functions. Therefore, we hope that the project team can combine the Blood Wool bracelet product and develop a few basic elements of a paper talisman plug-in in a short amount of time. Then we can coordinate and perfect it. Luo Nan raised his head. So it's just a temporary product, right? Ha! No. This is a long-term project. The government and the military's idea is to use the fortress as a large functional platform. We believe that it possesses this kind of potential. But there's a problem with your train of thought. Luo Nan raised his head. His gaze swept across Gao Meng, Zhu Ling, and even Tian Bang and He Yuan's faces. He shook his head and said, the direct cause of the crude functionality of the fortress is the crude functionality of the blood wool bracelet. The design of the paper talisman plug-in is cumbersome. After all, they are only transitional products. They are temporary crutches that can't be borrowed. If we were to talk about the root cause, it would still be the lack of the participants' configuration thinking and skills. In other words, it's a fundamental problem. Luo Nan mercilessly criticized the product his own company had launched. He conveniently swept everyone in. He spoke bluntly under the subtle expressions of the group of people. If a hardware plug-in is needed to realize a function, then this system platform is trash. The fortress can have hardware, but it can't be this kind of hardware. The fortress itself isn't that bad. It's just the current application model that's bad. Zhang Yingying giggled to the side. Luo Nan was baffled. What's wrong? Nothing. Honest boy, fight. Zhang Yingying clenched her fists and waved her arms, encouraging him. Quite a few people blinked from the sourness that assaulted their faces. Although he was the instigator of the situation, Gao Meng revealed the true face of the most enthusiastic fortress fan. He immediately got into the zone and asked anxiously, what's the best way to use it? Luo Nan thought for a bit and said, in an ideal state. What I mean is, under the impetus of complete configuration thinking and skill, the fortress should be like a giant ship roaming the universe. There should be hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of crew members inside. Together, they formed a group consciousness, but there was a clear division of labor. Everyone cooperated and performed their own duties. Their posts, functions, configurations, and operations were all unified. The crew of a bastion ship are the architects and operators of the ship. They use their thinking and technology to create the necessary configurations. These configurations must conform to the logic of the bastion platform, as well as the characteristics of the ship's own soul. Not only could it realize the effective integration of collective strength, but it could also increase the adaptability of the platform as much as possible and raise the upper limit of the platform. If necessary, the fortress platform on the mental plane needs to be unified with the equipment platform on the material plane. It's like the Deep Blue Walker's formatting domain. That should be a variant of the abyssal region configuration. It can be effectively combined with the mechanical combat platform and the operator, truly forming a mutual interference between the mental and the material. It is a combat platform that straddles the two domains. Luo Nanyang spoke eloquently. In the beginning, there were people in the meeting room who were whispering to each other and exchanging glances. But later on, everyone shut their mouths and stared at him. Aside from Luo Nan's speech, there was not the slightest noise in the meeting room. Only when Luo Nan's voice fell did Gao Meng loudly applaud. This train of thought is beautiful. It sounds like everything is right in front of your eyes. You've been thinking like this for a long time. It really was right in front of their eyes. This was because what Luo Nan had described truly existed in the alien civilization related to the external neuron. In the initial interface of the virtual brain system, there were two satellites orbiting around the virtual brain. One of them was an exoskeleton armor, which represented the development system of an individual. The other was a spacecraft in outer space, which represented the application of collective power. Luo Nan had more or less straightened out the logic within through this period of analysis and study. His train of thought naturally became clearer and more intuitive. It's truly marvelous. It even makes people believe that Mr. Luo has seen a scene that truly exists. This is the foresight of wisdom. Tian Bang lightly clapped his hands from the far end of the long table. His words sounded similar to Gao Meng's at first glance, but there was a bit of a different flavor in the transition of the syllables. He Yuan gave him an ice-cold glance because of this. Tian Bang was thick-skinned. He didn't even blink. But then he changed the topic to another aspect. We are more at ease now that we understand Mr. Luo's train of thought. Letting Mr. Luo become the chief technical officer of the scavenger project is truly the most appropriate choice. Zhang Yingying asked curiously, Chief Technical Officer? Yes. According to the usual practice of civil-military cooperation projects, the military is willing to provide a certain amount of remuneration and technical shares to employ Mr. Luo as the chief technical officer of the project. If Mr. Luo is willing, we can also provide an official title and engage in a longer and more intimate cooperation. Oh. Luo Nan responded casually. Tian Bang had said similar words yesterday during the remote vote. Now he repeated it again. It was like taking off one's pants to fart. It was an unnecessary move. Though the Blood and Tent Ring Fortress was not Luo Nan's original invention, he was probably the only person on Earth right now who truly understood the marvels within, excluding a certain person whose whereabouts were unknown. There was no need to talk about this in Xia City. Unless President Ouyang and Her Majesty Empress Wu relied on their seniority to interfere, no one could occupy this position. Since he had agreed, he had to do things. Luo Nan had a basic train of thought. He was operating on the flexible e-ink screen when he felt the gazes of all the participants. The natural noise had all disappeared. Zhang Yingying's elbow, resting on the table, came over. You want to enter the system? Only now did Luo Nan discover that everyone's focus was different. He was only thinking about the first half, but everyone else was thinking about the second half. Oh, that's what I mean. Luo Nan's uncle Mo Hai Heng was a high-level employee of the SCA. Luo Nan had some concept of the situation of the public sector. Tian Bang was talking about titles and not positions. This meant that if Luo Nan nodded, he could enter the military and government public sector and become a public employee. He could enjoy the most stable social benefits, but of course, he would be restrained by the entire public sector. He was not interested in this at all. Let's talk about titles and whatnot later. It's too troublesome. I don't want people to manage me. The breathing noises in the conference room returned to normal after hearing Luo Nan say this. The group of people all laughed. It had to be said that Luo Nan's current way of thinking was quite in line with his age. They were all laughing, but there were subtle differences between members of the military, members of the society, and even different people. Luo Nan didn't pay attention to these things. It was just as he said before. The fortress was still far from complete. He needed to expend a considerable amount of energy to supplement and amend it. Defense, attack, movement, and detection. There were 4 basic elements in total. Not only did he need to perfect them one by one, he needed to form a complete system. Even if he could find mature and complete examples in the user manual and the virtual brain system, the original design would not be suitable due to the difference in the user's basic abilities. It wasn't something that could be done in a day or two, or even a month or two. Luo Nan operated on the flexible e-ink screen. The first thing he opened was the calendar and the corresponding work schedule. Zhang Yingying moved closer to take a look. She saw that the schedule was at least half a year later. She couldn't help clicking her tongue twice. Luo Nan ignored her this time. He considered how he should insert the research and improvement work of the Blood and Tent Ring Fortress into the process of learning the external neuron configuration theory, researching his mother's thesis, and collecting and analyzing the cloud configuration fragments. Well, from this angle, the transformation of the fortress, the construction of the Blood Soul Temple thousands of kilometers away, and even the specific actions of killing Gong Qi in the cloud world were all considered exercises in the process of learning and research. And when he considered the difficulty, the transformation of the fortress seemed to be relatively simple. It was just right for a beginner like him. Luo Nan's last bit of apprehension was dispelled after he incorporated the mission into his own logical system. He immediately began to modify the schedule. He pondered about it for a while and said, "I need to equip a team." Tian Bang, He Yuan, and the others were discussing the specific issues of cooperation right now. However, the information that Luo Nan inserted was still the first priority. Tian Bang responded in the first instance, of course. Luo Nan wasn't going to be polite with him. Professionals can supplement depending on the needs. This includes but is not limited to mental side charms, perception, realization, mathematical modeling, mechanical design and manufacturing, material science. Oh, this includes laboratory production lines. Tian Bang chuckled, "You're the CTO. Research and development revolves around you. As long as the circuits don't go out of line, the demand doesn't exceed, and the output is uninterrupted, you can have whatever you want." Zhang Yingying curled her lips. Nonsense. Luo Nan was quite content with this before he was certain of a problem. He didn't say anything else. And at this time, someone from the society raised a question. It was directed at Tian Bang. "I have a question. If the reconstruction of the fortress is completed, its performance will be as expected. Then is there a clear direction for the goal? Is it to be pulled into the wilderness to fight against the mutants and dark-side races? Or is there some other plan? I feel that the government and the military don't have a clear arrangement in this regard." The person who spoke could be considered an acquaintance of Luo Nan's. It was another B-rank mental side psychic, Mr. Bai. His daughter was the mysterious and treacherous Bai Xinyan, who was hard to distinguish between friend and foe. Tian Bang maintained his smile in response to Mr. Bai's inquiry. "Even though I have confidence in Mr. Luo's talent and strength, it isn't a safe choice to go face to face with a monster like the human-faced arachnid when you've just set foot in this brand new domain. I am willing to suggest that we first apply this epic-making platform to Xia City's own defense and public security. First, we'll eliminate a few small problems and troubles. We'll continue to accumulate experience and plan for the future." Mr. Bai continued to question, "What are small problems and troubles?" As long as the abyssal region is involved, it seems that there is no room for small fish and shrimps to interfere. I don't know if we can catch small fish and shrimps in the abyssal region. However, there are some people whose ambitions and desires have climbed too high before their abilities are sufficient. There are many such people. Xia City is no exception. Tian Bang gave Zhu Ling a meaningful glance. Zhu Ling understood and switched to the screen of the presentation. Soon, a circular interface that was pieced together from hundreds and thousands of garbled symbols appeared. "This is an invitation to some absurd event. Tomorrow night is New Year's Eve. It should be about time. Is there anyone here who has received the latest information?" A buzzing vibration sounded just as Luo Nan's voice fell. Though it was small and weak, it could not hide from the eyes and ears of the group of ability users in the conference room. Luo Nan was carrying out the initial details of the plan when he felt his wrist vibrate. His gaze shifted and he saw the virtual screen of his wristband appear. The garbled dial on it was extremely eye-catching. It was no different from what was displayed on the screen of the presentation. Chapter 638. Crown, abandon the perfect position, like this, quickly turn back time. Deliberately bumping into each other will attract others to look around. The wine will help me lie. Crown, ugliness will eventually disappear, so, you decide the direction, deliberately colliding, pretending to be destined to be destroyed, and the mournful cries of samsara will no longer echo. Hoo hoo, no more echoes. Amidst the toxic melody, the lights, the sound, the screams, and of course, the most important thing was still the handsome and charming singing and dancing. This caused the small square stage that was temporarily set up to enter a serial explosion mode. Crown, crown, oh oh oh, shui yuan, shui yuan, shui yuan. This way, doll, doll. You decide the direction, Barbie dominates me ah. Oh my god, is this still that 18th tier girl group? Luo Nan stood behind a layer of barriers on the stage. He was no longer in the best position, but he was able to fully experience the explosive atmosphere of the scene. Who would have thought that the BHD girl group, which had always been pure and cute, would have such a strong reaction after playing a little sex appeal? Crown, crown, Shui Yuan. My queen of the snow garden. Bamboo Pole, this newly promoted B-class ability user of unknown age, waved his arms with all his might. Like the young men and women below, he gasped in admiration, and even screamed, completely ignoring the sidelong glances of his peers and non-peers. Papercut covered his face. He couldn't bear to watch. But when they looked further, Octopus, who was a medical worker, was also twisting his hips to show off his extraordinary sense of rhythm. It was as if he was on drugs. Since he was already in such a state, the joint investigation tonight had to be temporarily suspended. Sure enough, it's just as Brother Hai Jing said. It's more suitable for small venues. Luo Nan simply propped his elbow against the railing. He enjoyed this visual feast with a clear conscience. He never imagined that a naive person like Bai Yu would wear a suit, wear sharp eyeliner and maintain a cold expression while dancing. He almost didn't dare to admit it. There was an indescribable sexiness to it. Oh, speaking of which, I seem to have exposed something. Luo Nan subconsciously turned his face away. His line of sight cut through the entire region below. The BHD troupe's small stage performance was part of Xia City's New Year's Eve celebration. Yep, a small part. To be precise, their performance was part of the small stage of the Flowing Water Group in Xia City's New Year's Eve event. While the song, Crown, was being played, at least a dozen similar performances were being performed in various areas of Cloud City Water Village. If there was a citizen in the Sky Square right above the large living area, he would be able to see the live broadcast of more than 10 small stage performances on the big screen in the square. But these were just for the sake of making up for the gaps in the square singing competition. However, all of these paled in comparison to the main venue in the municipal square. At least, that was the case in previous years. This year's New Year's Eve event at Cloud City Water Village was destined to be very different from the previous years. At the same time, he pulled out dozens of acting scenes and divided them into dozens of stages of various sizes. This proved that the director had either lost his mind or was going to go all out. Only with a huge investment of manpower, money, and energy can we achieve such a grand scene. Those guys are having a great time. Zhang Yingying adopted a pose that was more or less the same as Luo Nan's. She was supporting herself by his side. It was quite a coincidence that Zhang Yingying was dressed in a black suit with fine white stripes and shorts. She was dressed in the same style as the BHD troupe on the stage. She didn't have a lower body, revealing her snow-white long legs. If she were to jump onto the stage, the group of otaku men and women might mistake her for someone else, but they would most likely prostrate themselves before her slender and beautiful legs. Luo Nan just said, "Yep," when Zhang Yingying leaned close to his ear. "I heard that you have something going on with them." "Ha!" It just so happened that the sound waves surged. Yep, that must be it." Luo Nan's face was blank. He expressed that he didn't hear what you said clearly. Zhang Yingying raised her eyebrows. Luckily, Octopus, who was having a great time twisting his body around, shouted from across the crowd, "What's this girl troupe called again?" "BHD." Luo Nan responded loudly. He was very happy to get a few more fans for his friend. But his voice was forcefully pushed down by Bamboo Pole, who was having the most fun. "Snow Garden is the tallest. Beauty leg. Octopus agreed loudly, beauty leg. Holy crap. Luo Nan wanted to correct him, but when he saw the crisscrossing long legs under the light, he was dazed. He missed the first moment. Bamboo Pole had already crossed his body and shouted at him, "Boss, if you have a signed photo, release it immediately. I want a hard photo. Snow Garden has a high-class face. It's a pity not to take a hard photo. Hard my ass." Luo Nan rolled his eyes. He was just about to seriously correct the attitude of this group of rotten people when a greasy voice spoke out from behind him, "If you want a photo, just take it on the spot. Now is not the time. Go back and have some peace and quiet. Take a good pose. Take a photo however you want." Luo Nan furrowed his brows and turned his head around. There were about 6 or 7 people behind him. They had just stopped not long ago. The leader was a middle-aged man in his 50s or 60s. He was a bit plump, and his clothes could be considered decent. But from his eyes to his teeth, he revealed the various colors of society. Right now, his eyes were fixed on Zhang Yingying's back. She was leaning against the railing, making people very suspicious. He was about to reach out with his hand in the next moment. And then he would be dead for sure. Perhaps it was Luo Nan's gaze that alerted him. The middle-aged man finally turned his eyes and met Luo Nan's gaze. Clearly, he didn't expect Luo Nan to be this young. His gaze was also this cold. His expression was a bit stiff. But when he glanced at Luo Nan again, he saw the flickering Mojibake dial on Luo Nan's wrist. He relaxed and laughed, "Little bro, are you coming along?" What was that be again? It's a high-quality girl group. It's possible to get one, but it's a bit difficult to get all of them. Everyone can work together for a bit. Before he could finish speaking, his companion next to him went, "Oh no. Brother Zo, this group isn't on the list." The middle-aged man, Brother Zo, chuckled, "It's just a trick the organizers use to lure people. Since they're here, what's there to worry about? There's a manual marking function on the system. Just spend a few more points." As he spoke, he raised his wrist and aimed at the BHD group on the stage. Just as he was about to operate, Luo Nan happened to turn around and take a step to the side, blocking the miniature lens. Brother Zo went, "Huh? Make way, little bro." Luo Nan completely ignored him. No matter what, Brother Zo was still a person with a reputation. He couldn't eat a loss in front of his friend. His expression turned quite ugly. "Little bro. Let me tell you this. In this situation, eating alone is the most childish behavior." Clap clap clap. Luo Nan still didn't turn his head. He just clapped his hands. "Okay, stop looking. Let's talk business." "What?" Chapter 639. As a big client who could attend the banquet, Brother Zo and Boss Zo naturally had bodyguards. However, the overwhelming disadvantage in numbers was enough to make any professional bodyguard lose the courage to confront them head-on. 5 meters away, the bodyguards hired with a lot of money were quite professional, and they were trying their best to squeeze in. However, any one of the audience in front of them was blocked by the big bodyguard, who had a strong physique, and it was difficult for him to move forward. For a few seconds, Boss So thought he was going to be beaten up. He was not stupid, and he immediately activated the help function on the dial. This was the promise of the organizing committee for the safety of the guests. However, to his surprise, the audience did not pay much attention to him. 2 or 3 seconds later, under the call of the young man who still looked like a child, they continued to gather there. Naturally, Brother Zo and the others were kept outside the circle. The young man's voice came from the center of the circle. A meaningful configuration must have a material foundation. Simple, switching circuits can be done with a little guidance. Complicated ones need to be converted. The noise around the stage interfered with the voice transmission. The intermittent sentences also made Boss So, his companions, and his bodyguards confused. They did not know what these people were doing. They were obviously VIPs of the banquet, but they wanted to have a class in such a fun place. Was there something wrong with their brains? But this was also good. They were all people with families and businesses, and they were all here to have fun. No one wanted to have a conflict because of something inexplicable. Boss So gave his bodyguard a look, and the latter understood. Now that there was no obstacle, he came over to cover him and cut off the audience as much as possible. They retreated along the inside of the corridor, trying to leave this place of trouble. At this time, the service staff of the banquet contacted Brother Zhou through the communication device. Chairman Zhou, we have locked on to your position and ensured that you are under surveillance. Your personal butler will arrive in 1 minute to deal with the relevant matters. Yes, 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 yes. Boss So heaved a sigh of relief, but he also felt a little regretful. If he had known this would happen, he would have brought his personal butler with him. He should not have despised the butler just because he was a middle-aged man about his age. If the butler had been with him just now, at least there would have been a buffer. Even though there would be people coming to deal with the dangerous situation soon, Boss So and his group were not willing to wait around. While those people were focused on the lesson, they continued to retreat. Right at this moment, when the two performances were intersecting, the surrounding noises dropped a lot. In the middle of the crowd, the youth's voice also became clear. Basically, conversion is still necessary. In terms of the composition of the spiritual plane, those that did not enter the abyss were mostly turbid streams. The soul energy of an ability user and a normal person is essentially the same under normal circumstances. Damn, he's a fraud. Mr. Zhou was a well-known figure in Xia City and a frequent customer of the Starry Sky Club. He was quite knowledgeable. He immediately classified Luo Nan in his mind. There was no way to reason with this nagging fellow. A wise man knew better than to fight when the odds were against him. If he couldn't afford to provoke him, then why couldn't he hide? Just at this moment, the voice of the young faker rang in his ears again. He seemed to be giving an example, just like us and the few over there. It's not so easy to distinguish between us at the low-end spiritual level. Meh. Boss So suddenly felt his scalp tingle. He saw that group of dangerous people all turned their heads, their sharp eyes focused on his face. F***ck me. Boss So was pinned down by over 20 gazes. Not a single one of these people seemed to be good people. Even though there were bodyguards in front of him, it was as if Boss So had been impaled into a wall. His entire body froze in place, unable to move a single step. Only his bladder instinctively contracted and expanded. Where's the housekeeper? Why hasn't his personal housekeeper arrived yet? Excuse me, excuse me. Hurried footsteps rang out from the other end of the corridor. For a second, Boss So practically believed that his personal housekeeper had arrived. But then he realized that it was really hard for a middle-aged man of his age to have such a clear and sweet-sounding female voice. A group of people appeared in the corridor as the voice rang out. 3 of them had stage makeup on, and they all wore the same black long women's suits. They completely covered their shorts, exposing their snow-white long legs. Without a doubt, this was the BHD girl group that had just performed on the small stage with great success. The 3 beautiful girls were dripping with sweat due to the high intensity of the dance. Clara, who had a slightly weaker body, had her hair wet. But their already excellent skin quality seemed to reflect a layer of jade light. It was extremely dazzling. And this made things difficult for the stylist, who needed to quickly touch up their makeup. He walked backwards the entire way, completely unaware of the dense mass of people behind him. Bai Yu had called out to him early on. She called out to him to pay attention as she passed. Oh, Shui Yuan's life. This is undoubtedly a meeting of fate. Whether he was a true fan or just joining in on the fun, Bamboo Pole was quite engrossed in his role. He saw the BHD trio walk over quickly, and after sighing with emotion in an aria style, he wanted to rush over and ask for an autograph. But just as he took half a step, Luo Nan grabbed him by the arm. Didn't you hear that we need to make way? As a junior in the entertainment world, BHD had a very heavy task to perform tonight. They needed to endlessly switch between various small stages. They really didn't have a chance to catch their breath. This corridor was specially designated by the authorities to be a fast and convenient passageway for actors and actresses to quickly switch between stages. Of course, the appearance of Boss So and the others, including Luo Nan, proved that the organizers had some hidden plans. Luo Nan didn't want to delay the work of the BHD trio, but he underestimated his position in the hearts of this small girl group. Ha! Shredded radish. Mr. Luo. Boss. The three beautiful girls all addressed him differently, but their attention was all focused on Luo Nan. Their nearly jogging footsteps all came to a stop. This kind of reaction made Boss So, who was behind the crowd, suddenly realize something. So it was like, "Ah! Don't delay. Do your best." Following Luo Nan's words, the dense mass of people in front of them all moved back under Luo Nan's command. The corridor wasn't wide enough for BHD and their team to quickly pass through. Even though there were no compliments, this kind of action and this kind of effect was enough to satisfy the vanity of these girls. Under Shui Yuan's lead, the three girls all bowed in thanks. This way, the little meeting seemed to be coming to an end. But Bai Yu was still a bit unwilling to give up. She had already run 2 steps when she turned around and asked, "What did you think just now?" Bamboo Pole, Octopus's whistle, and Zhang Yingying's snort mixed together. Luo Nan's mind was in a mess. He subconsciously spat out a word that left a deep impression on him, beauty leg. Bai Yu staggered and turned halfway around. Her snow-white and smooth thighs tightened, nearly giving Luo Nan a knee strike. But in the end, she put one hand on her forehead and bent one leg slightly. She borrowed her excitement to quickly strike a photogenic pose. "I think so too. You have a good eye." In the end, the young girl couldn't hold it in any longer. Her face turned red. Luckily, her stage makeup was quite thick and she used a smile to cover it up. She turned around and ran away, giggling and laughing. When she met up with her companions, one of them smacked the back of her head and the other smacked the buttocks. She was severely punished. All she could do was cry out. The members of BHD, who were currently enjoying the most glorious moment of their acting careers, obviously didn't know that there were a few pitiful bugs behind the courteous audience and fans on one side of the corridor. Their eyeballs were about to pop out of their sockets. They looked like a bunch of half-dead fish. "Don't give me an opportunity." Boss So's internal spasms had already affected his stomach function. At this moment, in his blurry vision, a middle-aged man in a classic black suit with a bow tie quietly appeared. This man was none other than Boss So's personal butler. The two had met before when Boss So had entered the venue. It was just that Boss So's brain had been fried back then. He believed himself to be an old player and wanted to do something a bit more exciting, so he refused this service. Now. It wasn't too late. Boss So struggled to speak, but before he could straighten his tongue, he saw his personal butler use impeccable etiquette to bow to the young psychic. It couldn't be considered flattery, but it was a clear and direct choice based on courtesy. It caused Boss So's face to suffer an incorporeal blow. The pain was so great that it suppressed the diffuse internal spasms. The personal butler spoke respectfully. "Mr. Luo, we are very sorry that such an unpleasant matter has occurred." "Oh, it's nothing." Luo Nan swept a glance at Boss So, who was stuck to the wall. He confirmed once more, there's nothing unpleasant. Strangely enough, when Boss So made eye contact with Luo Nan once more, the restlessness that filled his heart and lungs, as well as the rage that rushed to the top of his head, seemed to have been forcefully stuffed into a freezer. It rapidly cooled and froze. Then his reason returned. He used the most basic knowledge of social relations and basic thinking to quickly piece together a logical chain. The organizer of the grand banquet was the LCRF, the famous Life Cycle Research Fund. Specifically, it was organized by Cloud City Water Village and coordinated by the Starry Sky Club. This kind of power was completely unstoppable in Xia City, not to mention the entire Earth. However, the staff of the organizer would rather offend a major client like him in order to display sufficient politeness and humility in front of the young psychic. Wasn't the truth clear enough? Boss So shivered. A person's perception was always particularly sharp at times like this. So he could faintly sense that his rather clever gang of scoundrels had a similar reaction. Then the young psychic shot him a glance at this time. No emotion could be seen in his eyes, but the more it was like this, the more Boss So found it unbearable. He even felt as if his internal organs had been hollowed out. Only the cold energy known as fear grew from within the black hole, spreading layer by layer. His personal butler was a smooth and slick person, but he was truly unable to make an accurate judgment when faced with this seemingly innocent young man before him. He paused for 2 seconds and could only ask probingly, "Mr. Luo, if you don't mind, I'll take these people." Chapter 640. Compared to mature language and vocabulary, the ability of human body movements to convey information was far too vague. In this current situation, Luo Nan's simple action of raising his hand could be interpreted in a positive way as, "I got it," or "do whatever you want." It could also be interpreted as, "You shut up," or "don't be noisy." No matter how smooth and slick the butler was, he didn't dare to make a rash judgment. As for Boss So and the others by the wall, the thumping of their hearts could practically drown out the dynamic music that had just sounded around the stage. "Let's continue." Luo Nan raised his hand. He just had the project team members, who had just given way, come over and discuss again. Boss So looked at the screen of people blocking the young psychic. It was as if he had just woken up from a nightmare. His legs went soft, and he sat against the wall. A bodyguard grabbed him halfway. The butler squeezed out of the crowd at this time and came over to support him. Right now, Boss So had long since forgotten his previous anger. There was only one thought in his mind, and he spoke it out loud. "Let's hurry up and leave." No one had any objections, but their fate tonight was destined to be filled with twists and turns. Boss So's voice hadn't even fallen when Luo Nan's voice lingered in their ears like a lingering nether spirit. If there are no problems with the information, then there really are people who have established relevant illegal configurations through this event. Then the participants, the large number of tourists in Cloud City Water Village who don't know anything, are all targets that can be used. The people beside us are all participants. In an ideal situation, no matter how useful they are, they should occupy a certain position in the illegal configurations. I didn't. Boss So didn't understand at least half of Luo Nan's words, but he was able to understand the most critical part. Clearly, this matter wasn't over yet. Things were already like this, so he couldn't care about anything else. His words of defense blurted out. He was even faster than the gazes of everyone else. The butler's face was a bit stiff. He turned his head to speak, but all he saw was a group of people forming a human wall. Luo Nan didn't pay any attention to the noise outside the wall. He took the opportunity to ask a question. Where are they inside? In other words, if you are the designers, how should you use them most appropriately? You can talk about your own views. None of the project team members spoke. They just looked at each other. In the end, Bamboo Pole grinned with a bitter smile. Hold on. Your course is progressing too quickly. We're still learning the basics. It's not like you want us to do independent design. Luo Nan shook his head. Learning the basics requires a basic train of thought, and this train of thought is extremely simple. As I said earlier, any mental construct must have a material foundation. Maybe we don't know what those illegal configurations are, but we can definitely come into contact with some of them. Which one? Bamboo Pole asked on behalf of the other members of the project team. The structure of the human body and soul. Luo Nan casually waved his hand, taking the people in front of him into consideration. I remember saying that in a broad sense, the structure of a person's body and soul is also a type of configuration. Although the efficiency was a bit low, especially on the mental plane, its material foundation gave soul power a characteristic that was hard to change. The structure of inheritance and evolution over thousands of generations had a certain determinism. The material foundation of the human body determines that our bodies of flesh and blood are not as stable as steel or computer programs. There is bound to be a process of ups and downs. The majority of people under normal circumstances do not have a clear direction in their mental activities. The corresponding power flows, disperses, and transforms. Under these circumstances, soul power is like a container riddled with holes. In theory, it is necessary to seal off all other exits in order to allow it to effectively accumulate and operate. Only a single flow of power is given to this power. Cultivators guard their minds internally. Essence is the only one. This is probably the implementation of similar principles. Luo Nan's words were like words spoken on the side of the road to the elites of the project team present. However, some words needed to be said in the context and the identity of the speaker. The members of the project team all listened earnestly. No one, at least on the surface, showed any impatient emotions. There were even some people who tried to follow Luo Nan's train of thought. A young military researcher said, "Teacher Luo, what you mean is that the turbid flow on the mental plane is similar to ineffective waste heat. And in order to form an effective configuration, efficient rules and constraints must be formed. We need to find these rules." No, it should be to find the exit that forms the configuration rules. Zhang Yingying reminded Luo Nan of the identity of this military researcher. Shi Xinhe. Apparently, he has worked in AB team before. Luo Nan nodded slightly. He was expressing affirmation towards Zhang Yingying's intelligence and Shi Xinhe's train of thought. The exit needs to be singular, but the choice of exit is flexible. The human mind has many layers and changes. High-level ideals and beliefs are fine. Low-level emotions and desires are also fine. You still need to make a judgment based on the actual situation. Take today for example. If this New Year's Eve event is indeed a deliberately created environment, then what is the most appropriate choice? Someone else answered before Shi Xinhe could speak. Of course, it's low-level emotions and desires. Luo Nan shook his head. Too crude. Human emotions are complex. The structure of the human body itself is a chaotic system. The brain regions and neurotransmitters involved in nearly every emotion are different. Conversely, the brain regions and neurotransmitter conduction bring about changes in emotions. The relationship between brain regions and neurotransmitter conduction isn't one-to-one. As a designer, as long as the conditions are met, you can randomly choose an exit. You can have over 10 different solutions. The starting point can be located anywhere in the 3 zones, not to mention the labyrinth of the abyssal region. Luo Nan's denial made the majority of people afraid to open their mouths. Instead, Shi Xinhe muttered to himself, in order to crack this design, the fortress must focus on strengthening the detection and sensing module. It involves many layers and many angles. It seems that attack, defense, movement, and detection are the most important of the 4 basic modules. Does Teacher Luo mean to say that this is the focus of our next step of work? Researcher sure is worthy of being from the AB team. Bamboo Pole clapped his hands on Luo Nan's head and laughed, searching and fighting as one should be the mental side's inclination and advantage. This direction is certainly not a problem. And speaking from a practical point of view, detection and identification is indeed the #1 priority when it comes to catching illegal configurations. Most people came to a sudden realization at this time. Today, Luo Nan didn't just come to scout and teach. He also came to determine the project team's progress plan. Perhaps he also had the idea of observing and promoting talents. Didn't that sure Shinha just pop up? For a time, there were those who came to a sudden realization, those who wrung their hands, and those who were envious. Even though the military and political departments dispatched elites with excellent qualities, the subtleties of human nature were not factors that could be completely controlled in the end. Luo Nan remained silent after Bamboo Pole opened his mouth. He just quietly sized up the turbid flow that flowed around him, distinguishing the color changes within. Actually, he had never thought of things in such a complicated way, but letting others think in such a complicated way was a pretty good method. Letting Bamboo Pole worry about it was also pretty good. Brother Bamboo Pole, can I express a bit of a different opinion regarding the word illegal? Suddenly, a female voice cut in. The voice carried a smile that was yet not a smile at the end. It sounded intimate, but the content was thorny. A group of people walked over with quick steps from one end of the corridor as the voice spoke. Leading the group was a middle-aged woman with short hair and a neat temperament. Luo Nan had seen her before. She was the manager of the Starry Sky Club's restaurant department. She was also a good friend of Bamboo Pole, Sun Jai. Luo Nan didn't have any ill feelings towards Sun Jai. He saw this neat woman approach him with a few steps, and he indicated for the surrounding people to make way for her. Sun Jai called out to Bamboo Pole from afar, but she was the first to bow to Luo Nan when she got closer. Her attitude was extremely low. "Teacher Luo, sorry to disturb your lesson." This low attitude just happened to complement the thorny attitude of Bamboo Pole. Overall, she was neither servile nor overbearing. Luo Nan gave a slight smile in response. He knew himself well enough to deal with such a shrewd, capable, and worldly person. He wouldn't forcefully stick his head out, so he let Bamboo Pole deal with her. Bamboo Pole didn't regard himself as an outsider. He laughed and spread his arms open to welcome her. "Oh my, this bro's business is expanding really fast. No wonder you look radiant and overflowing with spring." Sun Jai giggled as she gave him a light hug. She spoke into his ear in a voice that the surrounding people could clearly recognize. "No matter how radiant you look, you can't stand the pressure of one hat after another. Can you give me a chance to defend myself?" "What are you saying?" Sun Jai had already pushed Bamboo Pole away before he could finish speaking. She faced Luo Nan and spoke sternly. "Teacher Luo, if those people just now offended you in any way, I am willing to apologize to you on behalf of these ignorant people." Luo Nan grunted. "There's no need." Sun Jai spoke again. "There are some matters that are quite out of line in this grand banquet. But I ask for Teacher Luo's forgiveness. This routine reception banquet is actually the LCRF's expression of gratitude to our colleagues and customers who support our biotechnology research every year. Since our customers involve all walks of life, in every field, have different requirements, and have different hobbies, as the organizer, and co-organizer, we can only seek the greatest common divisor within the limits of our capabilities." Luo Nan grunted but didn't have much of a reaction. Sun Jai behaved like a diplomat. "I won't deny that many customers use their wealth, power, and other resources to obtain things that this society doesn't advocate, but it doesn't prohibit, in order to obtain a short period of stimulation. But we also do our utmost to restrain these actions within the bounds of legality and compliance." Bamboo Pole faced his old friend and seemed to agree. "That's right. This is a society of law, not a society of morality." Sun Jai glared at him without the slightest bit of concealment. Luo Nan's voice rang in her ears at practically the same time, yes. From a technical point of view, there isn't much meaning in distinguishing between legal and illegal configurations on the mental plane before there are legal standards. Quite a few people raised their eyebrows when these words were spoken. Chapter 641. The current Luo Nan was undoubtedly the center of attention of everyone present. The object of his attention was also undoubtedly the object of everyone else's attention. Almost everyone subconsciously cast their attention toward Boss So, examining him and pondering. Boss So had the last piece of the jigsaw puzzle knocked out under the focus of everyone's gazes. He became a complete idiot who stood there, frozen on the spot. While the vast majority of people were watching Boss So, there were also a few people discussing among the crowd. That old lover of yours isn't simple. She dug a trap in a matter of minutes. It's good that our boss Luo is stupid and straightforward. He forcefully got over it. Screw you, old lover. She could even be my mom. Uncle Bamboo Pole, your taste is really heavy. It's fine as long as her taste is good enough. Both sides were thick-skinned. Bamboo Pole couldn't do anything about Zhang Yingying. He could only laugh dryly and get to the point. Sometimes, it's better to be a bit more direct when dealing with things. What are you guys talking about? Octopus was a medical worker and a laborer in biological experiments. This wasn't his field of expertise, so he didn't understand for a moment. But this didn't affect his curiosity. Zhang Yingying pursed her lips. I'm talking about Brother Bamboo Pole's old lover. She started talking about legality and illegality. She has bad intentions. Octopus seemed to understand, but he didn't. He could only ask, is there anything else? Hee hee. What's a law? It's just a tool for a ruler to protect his interests. Then who's the ruler? This is still undecided for now. But from the knowledge of the vast majority of people, if they had to choose between the expounder and the executor of the law, who would they choose? Would it be us, the mysterious members of the inner world, or would it be the government and the military? Oh, of course it's. Oh my, this sister is from the Starry Sky Club. Octopus wasn't an idiot. He just couldn't wrap his head around it for a moment. He slapped his thigh when he heard this. That's it. Zhang Yingying shot a cold glance at Sun Jai. If Luo Nan had followed this woman's logic, then he would have thrown the judgment standards and authority of the relevant configurations to the military, which we have no control over. Zhang Yingying wasn't sure if anyone was deliberately eavesdropping on them, so she simply posted it on the psychic wave network. Don't be fooled by the fact that everyone is working on the so-called Fortress project together. The atmosphere is lively, and the researchers are as respectful as primary school students. Even if this group of researchers were to kneel and lick Luo Nan's boots, could they represent the government and the military in kneeling and licking Luo Nan's boots? It's true that the branch cooperates with the military and political departments, but the Starry Sky Club is basically a bastard of the military and political departments. Bamboo Pole coughed. He's not a bastard, he's an LCRF. His bloodline is more mixed. LCRF, also known as the Life Cycle Research Fund, was an important investment fund in the field of biology jointly funded by several top tycoons on the surface. However, its backers were almost certainly some big shots in the political and military circles. Moreover, many forces in the inner world also had shares in it. Don't be fooled by how Tianbang treated the so-called Grand Banquet as a target, looking like he was about to flip the table. From the perspective of bloodline, this was more like a small experiment conducted within a controllable range. To put it a bit more formally, it was nothing more than a confrontational drill. Disregarding the element of internal strife, there might even be important members of the LCRF in the drill directing department. In the eyes of these people, the branch ability users led by Luo Nan were no different from the so-called creators of the illegal construction. If they were to really dispute over this matter, both sides would go to court. They would be casually manipulated by others. Who knew how long it would take to figure out who was right and who was wrong? Even if they were able to figure things out in a short amount of time, once this matter became a precedent, would they still have to follow the same rules if they were to encounter similar matters in the future? When that happened, the Xia City branch would be handing over the initiative and moral status. It was fine if the two sides were harmonious, but if there really was a conflict, it would be nauseating to death, not to mention anything else. Zhang Yingying and Bamboo Pole, these two scheming people, couldn't help but feel lingering fear. After Zhang Yingying calmed down, she became very curious. Do you think our boss Luo really doesn't understand, or is he pretending not to understand? Right now, no one could give Zhang Yingying an answer. The core party, Luo Nan, didn't need to give anyone an answer or an explanation. He just glanced at Boss So once more. He didn't want to linger in this cloister that had already been completely cut off. He walked forward without a word. 20 to 30 people naturally followed him forward. In the blink of an eye, the stream of people in the cloister had pretty much dispersed cleanly. Only Boss So's group of people were left standing there stupidly. They were like human stumps. An unknown amount of time passed before Boss So's brain finally recovered to a minimum level of operation. What the hell? What the hell? His mouth muttered curses, but in reality, these curses didn't leave behind any traces in his memory. Someone from his gang of scoundrels asked at this time, "What do we do?" Boss So's mind was restless. He slapped the wall. What do we do? Haven't we had enough yet? We didn't check the almanac before we left today. Let's go back. Let's go back, okay. Boss So's personal butler spoke at this time. Mr. Zhou, tonight's events are absolutely not something we want to see. Boss So wanted to get angry, but he had just confronted a true big shot. He really couldn't bring himself to be angry. He could only chuckle twice. Fine. You don't need to say anything. I crawled out of the corpses of World War III when I was a kid. I know what to endure and what to admit. Just pretend that I never came here tonight. It had to be said that Boss So's behavior was quite straightforward. The problem was that the personal butler didn't loosen his grip. Mr. Zhou, from the standpoint of the Foundation, please give us a chance to make up for it. Boss So was baffled. I don't need any compensation. I want to go home and sleep right now. Of course. This isn't a problem. We just need to adjust our timing and pace. The personal butler finally loosened his grip. But at this time, a dozen or so robust young men wearing black suits walked over from the other end of the cloister. They pressed forward. While Boss So and the others were muddle-headed, they had already assigned their tasks. 2 people were assigned to take care of 1 person. They didn't even miss out on bodyguards. This was a powerful invitation. Please do us the honor. The personal butler's expression was the most professional. At the very least, it was impeccable in form. Let's not talk about how Boss So and the others in the cloister were honored. Luo Nan and his group were already half a floor away. They were truly majestic. Those who didn't know better would think that some big shot had come over for an inspection. At least on the surface, Sun Jiayi really did treat Luo Nan like a big shot. She followed closely along the way. She explained to Luo Nan every time they passed a region. What was the position of this place in tonight's New Year's event? What functions needed to be realized? What emergency plans were in place? She practically treated herself as half a designer. Luo Nan was quite interested in this. This was because this was very much in line with the theory that all configurations must have a material foundation. With Sun Jia's explanations and his own overall observation with his mental senses, Luo Nan already had a more intuitive and clear understanding of the overall planning and layout of the grand banquet. This would be very beneficial to the progress of the project. Unfortunately, the time was almost up. Luo Nan raised his wrist to look at his watch. He added a few words in his mind before finally speaking. "Thank you for your explanation, Director Sunday. I have benefited greatly from it. I need to go take care of a few private matters." "Ha! Forgive me for asking, but does Teacher Luo need any help?" Sun Jia didn't feel the least bit presumptuous in her words. "I'm just going to see my sister. She has a performance on the main stage tonight. She has an appointment with her family." Recently, Luo Nan's status in the inner world had risen with the tide. In a certain sense, it had increased the safety of his family. The big powers were watching closely. Small thieves didn't dare to make a move. It was much better than when the 2000th Miss incident was brewing. Under these circumstances, he was a lot calmer when it came to talking about his family situation. In fact, part of the reason he came tonight was to lead a team for research. But more than that, he came to protect his friends like BHD and his sister, who was also performing at the Cloud City Water Village branch venue. Sun Jia had the status of being the organizer and co-organizer. She certainly had a thorough grasp of this sort of information. She wasn't surprised at all when she heard Luo Nan's words. She said with a smile, "Since it's a family gathering, then we won't disturb you. If Teacher Luo has any needs, just let me know. Tonight at Cloud City Water Village, there's no one more convenient than us to do things." "Okay." Luo Nan wasn't polite. He gave a slight nod, but then he thought of something else. He said, "Director Sun, that boss So doesn't have anything valuable on him. Don't make things too difficult for him." Zhang Yingying pressed her fingers against her forehead. Her slender hands covered most of her face as she laughed sullenly. She had just said that he didn't understand. She was really sorry. Sun Jia was actually able to maintain her smile unchanging in this awkward situation. "Don't worry, Teacher Luo. Some clients are quite curious. They want to take advantage of this special environment and time to carry out a few special experiments. But overall, there's still a sense of propriety." Luo Nan was amused when he heard her words. "What do you mean by experiments? For example, experiments?" A male voice suddenly appeared, replacing Sun Jia's explanation. At the same time, a tall and thin man appeared in front of the crowd. He took 2 steps forward, but he was promptly blocked by Chinikuan and Gauda. Sun Jia didn't have such a reaction when she appeared. This also proved that the 2 security elites were intensely vigilant towards the newcomer. The tall and thin man wore a well-ironed formal suit. His appearance was ordinary, but his aura increased. He stood there with a chuckle, looking very calm. He didn't care about Chinikuan and Gauda's obstruction at all. Or it could be said that he didn't care at all. Separated by the wall of people, the person spoke in a manner that was neither fast nor slow. "Mr. Luo, your subversive expression on the mental plane has caused many people to become interested in the basic structure of this place. We should take advantage of this event to design a few experiments. It'll be convenient for us to compare notes with you, Mr. Luo, in the future. Speaking of which, it's been a long time since this field has been this lively." Zhang Yingying frowned. She moved closer to Luo Nan's ear and whispered, "This person is..." Chapter 642. Luo Nan spoke straightforwardly, causing Zhang Yingying and a few other friends who were most familiar with him to be stunned. They could not understand how Luo Nan knew this person for a time. It must be known that secret orders were not like the Ability User Society. All of their members could be found on the website. These orders always pursued mysticism, especially the middle and upper echelons. Most of them lived in seclusion and rarely came out. Rumors and all sorts of intelligence were mixed together. It was hard to remember without specialized research. Li Taixing seemed to be a bit surprised. He chuckled. Teacher Luo, who has always immersed himself in research, actually knows my name. Then I am truly overwhelmed by the favor. My efforts on cages and configuration theory were not in vain. He changed the way he addressed Teacher Luo, but the smile on his face was a bit subtle. It would be more accurate to describe him as frivolous. Before Luo Nan could say anything, Zhang Yingying let out a low snort. According to the intelligence of the hidden indigo firm, Li Taixing was known for being amiable on the outside but arrogant on the inside. He was an extremely tough negotiator. The reason why he was not described as an expert was because he had truly negotiated very few difficult cases. This fellow was simply the loudspeaker and megaphone of the Order of Justice's power. She saw him use the word "I" 3 times in a row in 3 sentences. He had an attitude of "I am the center of everything." Even if his true personality was different from what was reported in the intelligence, the difference would not be too great. This fellow suddenly appeared in Xia City. It was hard for people to not think about complicated things. Zhang Yingying immediately sent this new intelligence to the firm and the relevant departments of the Xia City branch. She wanted to discuss things with Bamboo Pole and the others, but she heard Luo Nan speak courteously in a very practiced manner. I heard the word configuration from others, and then I began to research and apply it. One of them was Mr. Child of your order. Your order's research in this area should be much deeper than mine. Mr. Li, there is no need to be polite. The smile on Li Taixing's face faded a bit when he heard Child's name. There had always been a serious conflict between the secular side and the truth side within the Order of Justice. Almost every believer was unable to avoid choosing a side. Unfortunately, Child was a capable general of the truth side when it came to these political coordinates, while Li Taixing was a staunch supporter of the secular side. The two had even clashed and dueled twice, let alone being friends. Therefore, Li Taixing deeply suspected that Luo Nan knew what was going on inside and that Luo Nan had deliberately used Fairchild to attack him. Li Taixing had really wronged Luo Nan, but in a certain sense, he had underestimated Luo Nan. Luo Nan was not aware of the twists and turns between Li Taixing and Fairchild. The reason he could recognize Li Taixing was because he had been in charge of the negotiations between headquarters and the Order of Justice. Luo Nan had been monitoring the situation on the Pacific Ocean nearly 24/7 due to the fact that it involved the grand plan of killing Gong Qi. He had seen Li Taixing engage in a battle of words with important members of headquarters many times. Sometimes, Li Taixing had his arm around headquarters shoulder to shoulder. He had seen it many times, so of course he had to pay attention. Speaking of which, for the past 2 days, he had been wholeheartedly studying the information left behind by his mother and had not paid attention to the new movements over there. Therefore, Luo Nan and Li Taixing exchanged a few words of nonsense with each other. Their intentions were to gather intelligence. Luo Nan shot a glance over as his thoughts spun. He discovered another familiar face. Sheng Xiao. This person had once teamed up with An Wang. They could be considered to have crossed paths during the incident at Frost River Reality back then. After An Wang's fate was unknown, Sheng Xiao became the temporary person in charge of the Order of Justice in Xia City. Sheng Xiao and Luo Nan's believer, Bays, were one civil and one military. They supported each other and barely managed to preserve a portion of the Order of Justice's properties in Xia City. However, they no longer had a sense of existence. Oh, Sheng Xiao had come, but Bays was nowhere to be seen. Also, Bays hadn't warned Li Taixing, a direct secret-bound first oblatum of the Order of Justice, that he had come to Xia City. Did he give himself away? Or was he completely marginalized? Luo Nan pondered Li Taixing, and Li Taixing pondered Luo Nan. Both sides were unable to grasp the main points. Unfortunately, Li Taixing still wanted to give a response. He could only deliberately bypass Fairchild and put on a fake smile. It is said that the accomplished are the teachers. While the vast majority of people are still tossing and turning about black mass and white witchcraft, teacher Luo has used the format to formulate arguments, deciphered the meaning of the cage, and expounded on the marvels of configuration. He has seen through many mysteries with a single sentence. The title of teacher is not something that comes out of thin air. Luo Nan really liked this topic. He just so happened to see Jing Shao, so he returned the favor. Your Honorable Order uses the evolution field to propel the projection of the scales of truth. It is the most ingenious and grand soul strength transformation technique I have ever seen. It is said that a tall building rises from the ground. With this kind of transformation technique, the Order of Justice should be unrivaled in the world when it comes to research on the basic structure of the mental plane. You have this kind of foundation, yet you still want to strive for perfection. The research spirit of your Honorable Order is truly admirable. Li Taixing had managed to maintain a smile with great difficulty when Luo Nan's seemingly polite words entered his ears, but it nearly collapsed. The word "mother" swayed at the corner of his mouth twice before he swallowed it back down with great difficulty. Many people saw Li Taixing's unsightly expression. Those who understood the situation better, such as the intelligence expert Zhang Yingying and the Secret Order's research expert Bamboo Pole, could not help but snicker in their hearts. According to a few reliable and unreliable rumors, the Order of Justice rose to power because their first-generation First Ablatum coincidentally discovered the ultimate killing weapon, the Scales of Truth. He borrowed the power of this top-notch sacrificial weapon to become one of the most powerful beings on this planet in a short amount of time. No one could deny the talent of the Order of Justice's first-generation First Ablatum, but at the same time, there was a consensus in the industry. Many of the techniques and theories of the Order of Justice were established by reverse engineering the mighty power of the Scales of Truth. Even though it could not be confirmed that the foundational theories of the Order of Justice were flawed, this was indeed a reason for some powers to denounce and ridicule the Order of Justice. Of course, Zhang Yingying and Bamboo Pole did not believe that Luo Nan had done this deliberately. However, the more unintentional his words were, the more hurtful they were. Sure enough, Luo Nan did not specifically target anything. He even temporarily forgot about Gong Qi, Bays, and other practical problems because of the topic of this domain. Instead, he focused on a new topic, expanding his train of thought once more. He began to discuss with Li Taixing. First ablatumly, are the experiments conducted by your Honorable Order the same as those conducted by others? Li Taixing reluctantly responded, there are some differences. Luo Nan shook his head. If you're talking about structural verification experiments on the mental plane, then I don't believe that the direction of your Order of Justice's experiments will be consistent with our project team and the vast majority of ability users of the mental side. Li Taixing was stunned. What do you mean? Luo Nan said, it doesn't matter what the nature of the various experiments First Ablatumly has mentioned. It doesn't matter if it's black mass, white voodoo, or Eastern Taoist techniques. They can all be viewed as configurations or variations of configurations. Since this is the case, we must follow the fundamental principles of configuration. We must design according to the nature of the mental plane. Your Honorable Order is in the abyssal region. There was a limit to Li Taixing's patience. He interrupted Luo Nan's words. Teacher Luo, you misunderstand. The majority of our related experiments are conducted in the Three Zones region. Oh, you've already rejected this traditional concept. What should we call it now? Mental turbid. Of course we know that the abyssal region is a kind of nature. The construction and design of the abyssal region requires a qualitative change. Luo Nan shook his head and interrupted, it's not the same. The difference doesn't lie in the abyssal region or the abyssal region. It lies in the construction of the system itself. Oh. We all know that it's impossible to construct a configuration in the abyssal region when the soul strength of an ability user is still trapped in a cage. It's even more impossible for the general mental turbot to construct a configuration in the abyssal region. Hold on. Isn't there still the Ring of Blood Intent Fortress? There's also the Scales of Truth of Justice of your order. Forgive me for not being clear on the corresponding system of your order, but I assume that the Scales of Truth are used as a foundation for construction. I'll use this name for the time being. You don't mind, right? Li Taixing's lips twitched. It's simple and clear. Luo Nan laughed and continued, whether it's the Scales of Truth or the Ring of Blood Intent Fortress, they can organize and transport the consciousness within the cage to the abyssal region. This is precisely where the value of configurations lies. But at the end of the day, it is the most common principle. A change in quantity can bring about a change in quality, and the combination of structures can make this change more efficient. In the end, it just depends on where the direction of the change is. Li Taixing subconsciously turned his head and exchanged glances with Jing Xiao. But all he saw was confusion. What in the world are you trying to say? Luo Nan actually wanted to have a good discussion with Li Taixing, but when he opened his mouth again, he discovered that there really wasn't enough time. In the end, he decided to make a long story short. His tone was quite hurried. The inclination of the system determines the direction of the configuration itself. From what I can see, the Ring of Blood Intent Fortress should be classified as a tool type. It's like a spaceship assembled from parts. Through operation, everyone's strength is gathered together to charge into the abyssal region. It is a vehicle that carries soul strength. Its other functions can be created and assembled. It can also be dismantled and discarded. Just like what our project is doing right now. As for the Scales of Truth, it should be a biological type. Oh, perhaps a plant type would be more accurate. This is my estimation. The entire system of the Scales of Truth may be an inseparable organic whole. It can have countless sides, but it must have a true and complete appearance. It is like a large tree growing in the abyssal region. Its branches, leaves, and trunk grow within the turbulence. At the same time, there is an enormous root system that resides within and beneath the abyssal region. It absorbs nutrients from all levels. Then through various channels and methods, it is digested and absorbed by the entire system. In this way, one is manufacturing parts, while the other is developing roots. How can their natures be the same? The entire audience was silent. Perhaps no one could completely understand Luo Nan's words. But if they could understand a bit of what Luo Nan was saying from a macroscopic perspective, then they would have some thoughts and gains. At the very least, it was a kind of understanding. Chapter 643. The atmosphere of Luo Nan and Li Taixing's exchange was heavy and oppressive. 700 meters away from this group of people, Fei Jin wore a conservatively styled evening gown that accentuated her figure. She paced back and forth in the room. The virtual interface inside was playing the scene of the scene 700 meters away. The content made Fei Jin. More accurately speaking, it made the controller behind Fei Jin rather irritated. Yin Lu was still in a temporary stronghold several dozen kilometers away. She had been controlling Fei Jin to make the final preparations. She would appear before Luo Nan when the opportunity arose to carry out the relevant plan. But she never expected that she would encounter such a scene when she used her authority in the LCRF to remotely observe and collect Luo Nan's position and other relevant information through the monitoring system. This person. Is he crazy? Her voice dissipated within the room, but she didn't receive any response. Yin Lu turned to look at Mrs. Halder and saw her boss quietly sitting in a rocking chair. Her eyes were slightly closed. It seemed that she wasn't paying attention to the situation over at Cloud City Water Village. Or perhaps she didn't care about this matter at all. didn't care. How was that possible? Enla didn't believe that her boss didn't have any ripples in her heart. At the very least, she knew that the feelings in her heart were 10 times more complicated than what she had said. As a priest of the order who understood the fundamental marvels of the solidified configuration of the Abyss region, Enla had always prided herself on being wise. She had made some preparations. Ever since the 14th, when Luo Nan brought hundreds of tourists to break into the Abyss region in one fell swoop and engraved his subordinates' traces semi-permanently, she knew that according to the direction of Luo Nan's research, it was only a matter of time before he touched upon the foundation of the various secret orders. But she never expected that the final execution would come so quickly. A minute ago, she was in control of the core secrets. She was destined to control this order organization with nearly half a century of history. But at this very moment, the treasure that she had always carefully protected had been revealed in front of everyone's eyes. Someone was flipping through it and playing with it without a care. The last bit of luck in her heart vanished like smoke in a puff of smoke. Plant type. Tool type. Such a fitting and deadly description would probably appear on the desks of the leaders of the inner world and even the various powers of the secular society. Not only did Luo Nan's explanation penetrate the essence of the solidified configuration of the Abyss region, he even dissected the difference between the order configuration and the self-constructed configuration from a more objective angle. He tore down the final piece of the secret order system. After Shaman, the devil, the divine, the enchanting beauty, or the ugly monster, could only be judged by the more and more people who knew the truth. To the Blood Flame Order, to all secret orders, this was a sudden storm. I really want to kill him. Half a second later, Enlo realized that she had actually muttered it out loud. On the rocking chair, Lady Halder's eyes were still closed. Her body swayed gently, and a low voice flowed out from between her teeth. Both are expressing one's thoughts, yet there's actually no value in comparing them. I might as well do something more valuable. Enlo was speechless. At this moment, Luo Nan, who was far away in Cloud City Water Village, displayed an apologetic expression. This is an experience from several months ago. It gave me a bit of an impression. It was very blurry at the time, but it became clear in the past few days. I made some deductions, but I can't rule out the possibility that there's a problem with my memory. If I have offended you in any way, please forgive me. Without waiting for Li Taixing to respond, Luo Nan tapped his wristband. It's about time. I need to hurry over. First oblatumly, even though the nature of our experiments are different, we can still exchange basic principles. I hope that there will be a chance to talk again later. See you all later. Luo Nan was the first to leave after he finished speaking. A long line of people followed behind him. Sun Jai didn't move. She stared at the backs of Luo Nan and the others. A moment later, she let out a long sigh. Are there really people in this world who are born with knowledge? Li Taixing didn't speak again. He didn't show any expression or movement. He just silently watched Luo Nan leave. If he didn't do this, he might not be able to control himself and expose his killing intent in a straightforward manner. Li Taixing turned around and left after Luo Nan and the others entered the elevator. He didn't even say goodbye to Sun Jai and the others. Zheng Xiao silently followed behind him. There were also several people from the Xia City branch of the Order of Justice behind them. Ahead of them, Li Taixing walked faster and faster. It looked like he was returning to the lounge they were in before. Sure enough, Li Taixing returned to his starting point a few minutes later. Zheng Xiao followed Luo Nan inside. He sensed a strange aura within the room the moment he entered. He waved his hand at the attendants behind him, telling them to wait outside. After the arrangements were made, Zheng Xiao closed the door. He could clearly feel the slightly warped layout of the air in this room. This was an illusion technique that was secretly passed down within the Order of Justice. In this way, no matter what monitoring equipment was placed here, it would all become ineffective within the chaotic light and sound wave structure. Even a master of mental senses like Luo Nan would arouse the vigilance of the caster if he were to forcefully break through this barrier. Li Taixing clearly displayed a posture of wanting to discuss things in secret. Zheng Xiao actually let out a breath of relief. Being able to consider the issue of confidentiality proved that this secret-bound first ablatum, who temporarily managed the affairs of the Xia City branch, still maintained a minimum level of clarity. A mere second later, Zheng Xiao wanted to revise his judgment. Li Taixing didn't sit down within the room. Instead, he stood in the middle of the hall, staring at Zheng Xiao, who had just closed the door and turned around. I need to get rid of Luo Nan immediately. Hiss. Zheng Xiao suddenly shivered and subconsciously drew in a breath of cold air. Almost instinctively, he set up another layer of illusion barrier. After doing this, he could no longer maintain his low-key and reserved appearance. He suppressed his voice and said, "Don't worry. First ablatumly, be careful with your words." Li Taixing laughed when he saw Zheng Xiao's appearance. What do you think the Xia City branch will think after what just happened? What will they think when they realize that we laid down 2 layers of illusion barriers for a secret discussion? It's better than you pointing at their noses and shouting about killing. Zheng Xiao wouldn't say this sort of silent criticism out loud. He could guess the reason behind Li Taixing's great killing intent, so he took a roundabout way to persuade Li Taixing, first ablatumly, although Luo Nan is gifted by a god, his temperament and experience are lacking. The logic of his words often transcends the horizon. He might not have done it on purpose. Li Taixing directly interrupted him, gifted by a god. Do you also believe that there are people who are born with knowledge in this world? This. How about this? Let's do a multiple choice question. A single choice question. There are a total of 3 choices, A, B, and C. Li Taixing didn't give Zheng Xiao the chance to refuse. He directly gave the question, Luo Nan is gifted by a god, born with knowledge. B. There are no people who are born with knowledge in this world. Luo Nan was able to do this because he received a good education. He had one or a few good teachers who imparted a complete system of knowledge to him. C. There are no people who are born with knowledge in this world. With Luo Nan's family background, he doesn't have the time, energy, or conditions to learn such a complete and advanced system of knowledge from a teacher. He has other channels to obtain knowledge, and the current him is very likely to be nothing more than a plagiarist and a porter who borrows this channel. Which one do you choose? Zheng Xiao laughed bitterly, but he still hoped to persuade Li Taixing. He deliberated his response. Now that you say it like this, being born with knowledge is indeed the least likely option. But if it's a teacher, for example, his grandfather who has already gone mad, and his parents who have already been confirmed dead. Li Taixing sneered. Ever since Luo Nan's fame rose to prominence, various powers have conducted research and excavations into his family's circumstances as well as his grandfather's formatting theory. But what was the result? This. Too many people have been disappointed. The classical theory of formatting theory is still a freak that is a mixture of classical philosophy and neurobiology. Perhaps this theory does indeed possess a certain amount of influence in the wilderness, but compared to the rapid development of the archetype format in the last 10 years, this theory has already fallen behind in all aspects. Li Taixing stared at Zheng Xiao with a stern expression. Do you think that Luo Nan, a 15 or 16-year-old kid, is able to push this theory to such an inconceivable degree under the premise that he isn't gifted by God? The consecutive rhetorical questions made it hard for Zheng Xiao to parry. He could only laugh bitterly after bitterly. Li Taixing helped Zheng Xiao come to a conclusion. All right. Using the simplest method of elimination, we will inevitably choose C. Since this is the case, where does the channel come from? Where does the system of knowledge come from? Li Taixing's eyes sparkled with light right now. Zheng Zhao's heart thumped. He combined it with his own experiences, and he suddenly understood what sort of judgment and plan Li Taixing had in the end. Under these circumstances, Zheng Zhao didn't want Li Taixing to go to extremes no matter what. He racked his brains for a moment and finally braced himself to say, the problem lies in the fact that even option C itself can undergo further decomposition. Further decomposition. Li Taixing raised his eyebrows, then he laughed out loud. I know that there are quite a few people who believe that Jin Tong is related to Luo Nan's cage and configuration theory. Indeed, such a saying was popular right now. The main reason was that Luo Nan had proposed this theory was extremely close to the time when he killed Jin Tong. Luo Nan had indeed taken out a picture of Jin Tong's iconic headband in class on the 14th of this month. This fellow Jin Tong possessed an extraordinary electromagnetic domain that could be said to transcend the era. His extraordinary power had always been an existence that every major power coveted. After all, Earth's science and technology were still unable to escape the influence of the electrical age in the foreseeable future. Jin Tong had always kept this matter a secret for many years. It could be considered a major unresolved case. If Luo Nan's cage and configuration theory came from Jin Tong's legacy, or if it was a combination of this legacy and formatting theory, then the chain of reasoning could be considered relatively complete. However, Li Taixing didn't approve of this conjecture. If Jin Tong's destiny included the content of configuration, then why haven't I seen him become a master in this field after so many years? In terms of talent, intelligence, Jin Tong is in the upper middle of the top 100 powerhouses of the entire world. He's a 1 in a million character. Could he be that much worse than Luo Nan? He paused for a moment before speaking his final opinion. In comparison, there's an unlucky bastard in the headquarters of the Ability User Society. He said something that the vast majority of people believe to be nonsense. In fact, it really should be nonsense. It's an irresponsible conjecture that is more realistic. Priest Jing, you should know what I mean. The bitterness in Zheng Zhao's smile had already seeped into his bones. Li Taixing didn't care what Zheng Zhao thought. He spat out 4 syllables, one word at a time. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.